Greetings to the members of the National Executive of the African National Congress, the organization that we thank very much for organizing this event with the family, this memorial service of this giant, Comrade Vijay Ramla Khan. We'll also want to extend a welcome to the provincial leadership of the African National Congress across all provinces, regional leadership, and all branch executive committee members and members of the African National Congress, to the leadership of the Alliance, COSATU, SACP, and SANCO. We would like to also thank the ministers and deputy ministers who are logged in here, members of parliament and members of the provincial legislature, our veterans, Umkhonto Wesizwe family in the entire country, the former political prisoners led by Comrade Ibrahim, the veteran on being in the Robben Island, our academia that is here, all doctors, nurses, healthcare professionals that are also part of us here. We are also joined in this platform by various leaders of other formations that I may not actually have mentioned here, including the leadership of the sector, the unions that are on this sector, health. I would like to say to all friends and colleagues, comrades who are here, Amandla, you are in the right meeting where we are celebrating the life of this giant, Comrade Vijay Ramla Khan. I would now like to invite our Pundit Lokesh Maharaj, to open this celebration with the word of God. Honorable Pundit Maharaj.
Thank you. Namaste, Vanakkam, Saubona to everybody. सभी शक्तिशाली भगवान, हम आज हमारे देश के बेटे का सम्मान करते हैं जिन्होंने अपने देश के लिए अपना जीवन लगा दिया है। उनका बलिदान शब्दों के लिए बहुत विनम्र है, सिवाय प्रार्थना के इन शब्दों के। भगवान से प्यार करते हुए हमारे भाई को हमेशा के लिए शांति में रहने का आशीर्वाद दे, उसकी भावना को चरितार्थ करे, उसकी प्रतिबद्धता का सम्मान करे, उसे हमारे प्यार को भेजे। हम उस सेवा को कभी नहीं भूलेंगे जो उसने दी थी। All powerful God, we honor today the son of our land who has laid down his life for his country. His sacrifice is too humbling for words, except these uttered in prayer. Loving Lord, bless our brother forever in your eternal peace. Cherish his spirit, honor his commitment, send him our love. We will never forget the service that he gave. Om Anadinidano Deva Shankachakra Gadadhara Akshaya Pundari Kaksha Preta Moksha Pradobhava Atasi Pushpa Sankasham Pitavasa Samachyutam Ye namasyanti govindam na tesham vidyate bhayam Krishna Krishna kripalastvam agatinam gatirbhava sansara bhaghanam prasiddha purushottama Narayana surasreshta Lakshmi Kanta Varaprada Anena Tarpane Natha Preta Moksha Prado Bhava. O imperishable lotus-eyed Lord, wielding the conch, discus and mace, may it please thee to grant liberation to the departed one. Those who worship the Lord Govinda of dark hue, garbed in yellow silk, for them there is no fear of death. O most merciful Lord Krishna, who art the savior of the helpless, have mercy upon those who are drowning in this ocean of repeated birth and death. O Lord Narayana, foremost of divinities, consort of Lakshmi, Lord of humankind, please show compassion and grant liberation to the departed one. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti Om. Thank you.
Thank you very much, our Pundit Maharaj, for that. It is in keeping with the tradition of the ANC to always open our event, our activities in this fashion. Thank you, since 1912. We also are thankful that in the busy day that Comrade Sandy and children, Comrade Charlotte and the children have had, they are still able to be here with us. We noted a very dignified memorial service that was conducted by SAMS, and we hope that it went a long way, Comrade Sandy, to actually begin to ease the pain that you feel. May I now give this opportunity to Ricky Naidu and those who are assisting him to flight the video show of our Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan.
Lieutenant General Vijay Ramlakhan has contributed to many levels of society through his life, from a trade unionist, medical doctor, underground ANC cadre, Umkhonto we Sizwe combatant, to career soldier in the army. Having grown up in the apartheid system, he began student life with a sheltered outlook, but while attending medical school, his mind was freed from his previously blinkered social views, where he was involved in many student organizations. This involvement with student politics led him to join the ANC underground movement as a student activist, as well as programs engaged in sabotage against the apartheid regime. After graduating as a medical doctor in 1980, he worked by day as a doctor and by night as an Umkhonto we Sizwe soldier, a contradiction he happily lived by as he appreciated its significance. He was later arrested after 5 years and was sentenced to prison on Robben Island in 1987. Here, he became a member of the Central Political Education Committee, and with the unbanning of the ANC, spent a year and a half preparing fellow political prisoners to become leaders before they were released. Together with a group of ex-political prisoners, he is currently involved in launching the Robben Island Leadership Institute, where lessons they learned during their time in struggle are shared with current and new leadership in an effort to continue the path set by their forefathers. After his release in 1993, Vijay was called upon by the late Minister of Defense, Joe Modise, to assist in the creation of a new National Defense Force, where he has since spent the last 2 decades fulfilling many different roles. In 2005, he was promoted to Surgeon General, where he acted as the military physician to former President Nelson Mandela, and later the principal medical advisor to Madiba on behalf of the state. In this capacity, he was heavily involved in Madiba's care during his last few years. Lieutenant General Ramlakhan has received many awards for military service, was knighted as the Order of St. John by Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth for his contribution to military health, and was presented the UKZN Edgar Brooks Award for outstanding contribution to human endeavor and freedom.
Wow, indeed, a life well lived. Viva, Comrade Vijay, viva. Comrade Vijay, an internationalist, has his roots in KwaZulu-Natal, Khomas, Cato Manor, and lastly Chatsworth. We are now honored to have in our midst leaders from that province, where also he will be laid to rest. That is Comrade Sihle Zikalala, who is the Premier of the province, but also a provincial chairperson of the African National Congress. I now invite Comrade Sihle Zikalala to give us a word of welcome and his political remarks on this event of a memorial service of our dear Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan. Comrade Sihle.
Thanks a lot, Program Director, Dr. Sbongiseni Dlomo. we wish to take this opportunity to greet the family and friends of Dr. Ramlakhan, the leaders of various organizations within the Alliance, especially the ANC, SACP, COSATU, the leadership of the SANDF, the leaders and ex-combatant of Umkhonto weSizwe, friends and compatriots. On behalf of the African National Congress in the province of KwaZulu-Natal and the people of KwaZulu-Natal, we take this opportunity to once again convey our heartfelt condolences to the family of Comrade Dr. Ramlakhan, who took his final sleep 5 days ago. With his demise, our country has lost an outstanding cadre, a physician, a distinguished freedom fighter, and of course, a great and decorated general of the South African National Defence Force. We would like to convey our heartfelt condolences and gratitude to his bereaved family for working with our movement and the government on ensuring proper arrangement for giving him a well-deserved send-off. We're heartened for remembering that Dr. Ramlakhan was a revolutionary cadre of the African National Congress, a fearless combatant and a fearless combatant of the butterfly unit of Umkhonto weSizwe, and of course, a prisoner of conscience who was incarcerated on Robben Island for fighting against injustice and racial hatred. As his political home, the ANC thank his family for sharing this gallant fighter with the people of South Africa for a creation of a united, non-racial, non-sexist, equal and prosperous society. We're proud as the province that this son of our native soil was at the forefront of transforming the previously despised South African Defence Force into the present and inclusive SANDF that serves all the people of South Africa, irrespective of their status and color. It is equally humbling us that we know that he rose from the ranks of Umkhonto weSizwe, representing those who dedicated and surrendered their lives for the cause of the people. We know that he served the presidency, and among those he served was the President Nelson Mandela. And we salute him for the work that he did. Today he has reunited with his ancestors and with the stalwarts of our freedom, including the Commander-in-Chief of Umkhonto weSizwe, Nelson Mandela. He leaves our movement in the year when we have been losing many of our valued cadres and professionals, including Istwalandwe and Rumlangeni, who passed on last month. But this morning, we bid farewell to Advocate Comfort Zibuse Ngiti, who also passed away when we still expected a lot from him. They leave us when we are confronted with a number of challenges, including the COVID-19, the scourge of gender-based violence, the inequality, poverty, and unemployment that afflict many South Africans. They leave the African National Congress when it is accelerating the onslaught against corruption and the theft of public resources meant to serve the people. We must pick up the spear of our fallen soldier and not relent in the struggle against corruption and the creation of a just and equal society. In his honor and all compatriots of Indian descent who have fought side by side with the masses of the oppressed, we must continue to fight the agenda that seeks to divide and polarize the South African society on the basis of race, ethnicity, or religion. As we honor his memory, we recall the timeless word of Umkhonto weSizwe in their founding manifesto, where the People's Army said, and I quote, "The time comes in the life of any nation where there remains only two choices, submit or fight. That time has come to South Africa. We shall not submit, and we have no choice but to hit back by all means within our power in defense of our people, our future, and our freedom," close quote. Dr. Ramlakan was ready as a young person to die in the battlefield with his boots on for the noble cause of the freedom and the realization of the demand of the Freedom Charter. Let us not betray his contribution in the struggle. Let's continue to defend his legacy. Dr. Ramlakan has completed his race, and we know that he fought an excellent fight to the bitter end. To his family, we say, we send you condolences from KwaZulu-Natal, and please find comfort in the Irish blessings, which in part says, "May the road rise up to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. May the sun shine warm upon your face. The rains falls soft upon your field. And until we meet again, may God hold you in the palm of his hand." Hamba kahle Umkhonto weSizwe. Fare thy well, Dr. Ramlakan. Thank you, Comrade Program Director.
Thank you very much, Comrade Sihle, for those comforting comments and words to the family. We hope it will go a long way towards beginning the healing process of the family. I am humbled to be tasked by the family and African National Congress to be one of the program directors in this historic event today. I'm one of the 3 butterfly members who will be actually doing the programming. I now hand over to one other program director, Dr. Barry Kisnasamy, who will take us through. And when the time comes, we'll then introduce the third comrade, who will then be another program director, also a butterfly comrade, who also was part of this with Comrade Vijay. Comrade Barry, thank you very much.
Thanks, Comrade Sibongiseni Dlomo. It is indeed a sad occasion for us to unite in death, but victory is certain, and at least we have a free and democratic South Africa. The Operation Butterfly comrades who are surviving salute a fallen hero, our leader. But in order to set the stage, firstly, to thank the leadership of the ANC for allowing us the pleasure of officiating and being program directors together with other comrades, and the family for allowing us this privilege. I'm going to start by getting together some of his old comrades, and Dr. Mvuyo Tom, his classmate and longstanding student activist leader, former Vice Chancellor of the University of Fort Hare, will do the opening address on the student days at euphemistically called UNB, Alan Taylor Residence and the University of Natal Black Section. Dr. Mvuyo Tom, the floor is yours. Welcome.
Thank you very much, Comrade Chair, for the introductions. On behalf of the class of 1980, I would like to greet the Premier, Comrade Premier of KwaZulu-Natal, all leadership here, and observe the protocol that was outlined by Comrade Sibongiseni Dlomo. A special greeting to the family of Comrade Vijay Ramlakan, and special condolences we send from the class of 1980. Vijay was the 3rd president of the MSRC at the University of Natal, university of Natal Black section, as we called it in those years. The first in our class was Comrade Pule Malumane, followed by Comrade Soli Rataimane. This was a unique class which produced 3 presidents of the MSRC, the Medical Students Representative Council, in 3 years. VJ took the year 1979 to 1980. I spoke to some of our classmates, and there was none who missed the word humility when they described his values. Pule Malumane, Soli Rataimane, Virend Somas, and Jackie Mpafudi all used this word to describe VJ. Amongst the words that were used were that he was a leader. He was a gentleman. He was a man who sustained fellowship. VJ was a hard worker. His industriousness showed in that as an activist, as a leader, he never wasted a year in going through medical school. When he passed in 1980, he passed in the record time that was required. I can describe 3 events that molded VJ to be the revolutionary that he was. Starting from 1976, when we were in 2nd year at medical school, going on to 1977, when the University of Natal Medical School was threatened by closure to Black Africans in the university, who were going to be shifted to the then Medunsa. VJ was part of the struggles in terms of the students in that class. But the epitome was in 1980, when he was the SRC leader, the president of the SRC then, when we had the longest boycott as students in the University of Natal. That was our final year, and many a student was saying that if the students, that is then the high school students of the time, were to suffer as they were suffering, fighting against the apartheid education, the university students should be part and parcel of that. VJ led in those years. VJ, as Pule Malumane describes him, pushed things to happen. And he was impatient when things needed to happen among students. He was forceful, but humble. VJ, with his tallness and his long neck, was striding the corridors of the University of Natal, the corridors of South Africa, pushing for a free South Africa whilst a student. Rataimane, Soli Rataimane, describes him that he was a man whose medical training was not separated from political education. VJ was an extraordinary man. He led, but he also followed. He was quiet in his speaking, but he was very persuasive. I can close by quoting that he was a resolute leader. He was a man full of resolve. No wonder we had a lieutenant general in him that led the army in the health sciences in South Africa. VJ was part of the struggle against a new curriculum, which we ultimately followed, but we made sure that the quality of university students produced by the University of Natal was not compromised by the changes that were there when we were the first, and we called ourselves guinea pigs of the new curriculum. VJ was part of that struggle to make sure that the quality of that education was not compromised. We succeeded with all the fights that we had against the university in terms of the closure of the University for Africans. That never succeeded. The University of Natal remained the non-racial university in terms of the Black Africans, the colored people, and the Indians in the country. We bid farewell to VJ. We say, hamba kahle mkhonto, wakuthinta umkhonto.
Comrade Mvuyo, what an amazing class. We clearly remember that class, some of us who came in the class of 1977 after 76, and you gave us a tremendous reception, and thanks for your kind words, which I'm sure are a solace to the family and other comrades and friends who are listening in. Without further ado, I'm going to go to a colleague and comrade nurse who was also part of Operation Butterfly, but helped us a lot in terms of the nursing cadership within the movement. Comrade Tami Skenjana was a colleague of ours in the nursing fraternity at King Edward VIII Hospital, where many of us spent our formative years. Comrade Tami Skenjana, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Comrade Berry. Greetings to members of the family, leadership of our beloved country in its entirety, and all protocols observed. This afternoon, we gathered here to celebrate the life of a well-lived, of the life which is well-lived by our dearly departed Comrade Vijay. Comrade Vijay, in the midst of our pain of losing the husband, father, brother, and comrade, it's important to reflect on the contribution he made to the betterment of humankind. A wise person once said, "The ones we love can never be more than a thought away, for as long as our memory live on in our hearts." Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to just quickly go through some of our good, pleasant experiences with the comrades. In fact, most of the Namda family, those were terrorists. I'm sorry to say that. Comrade Rob, you are part of them. I'm talking here of Berry, I'm talking here of Daule, I'm talking here of Deliz, I'm talking here of Krodboom, you name them. They were very, very good. So we worked with the VJ under very trying circumstances where we had to train our youth from the townships as they were being shot at with pellet bullets, and they would just cut themselves and, you know, become infected. So we had to teach them the aseptic technique. We tried all the townships around Durban. Fortunately for me, we were neighbors. I was in Lamontville, he was in Merebank. But the most interesting part was when we went to Swaziland. We went to Swaziland, and before we got to the border, he knocked a rabbit. And before I knew where I was, I saw my toiletry scattered all over the car from my toilet bag. And yet the rabbit was put inside the toilet bag. And then we had a braai as we crossed the border. Coming back, well, people did the assignments that they were tasked to do. I, as a poor nurse, you know, I didn't know politics, and I don't know politics even today. Coming back from Swaziland, there's that road, Mkhuze, where you can't turn. So it's just our friends from the South African Defense Force were just waiting for us. And then we tried, we just wondered as to how we're going to come out of this one. Oh, we confused them. They asked us where we were coming from, and then we started confusing them, telling them that, we're coming from a cultural event where Africans wear their traditional gear, and then they dance and sing. That's where we're coming from. They got confused, and then they left us, they let us go. And yet there was some stuff in the car, which I do not know, of course, by virtue of being a nurse, you know that nurses in South Africa were not part of any politics, but we traveled safely back home. Comrade Vijay, as Tom Umvuyo has alluded to the fact that his humility was beyond, Vijay was a very kind-hearted person. Vijay would go to any length to assist a needy person. Vijay, as one is pensioned, but Vijay would come to my shack here in Pretoria, would visit. Just shortly before he just went off, he passed on, he came visiting. Comrade Sandy, I would like to thank you for having allowed Comrade Vijay to be part of us, because we used them. We used him. And we really had a successful journey with him. And the final thing which one would like to mention was when we organized the first international conference of the African National Congress in Durban, which was a success. Comrade, before I go, I would like to mention that Comrade Vijay assisted, trained, and was part of us when we changed the nursing body. Myself, Tembeka, Gwagwa, and Ziggy Matagane, and other progressive comrades. We formed an organization called the the Concerned Nurses of South Africa, which that organization turned what the nursing is. I'm not talking about the nursing today. I'm talking about that quality nursing body that was there, which was orchestrated, assisted by the very number of people I mentioned and others. So I want to thank the family for having afforded us that opportunity to work with Vijay. And well, one cannot begin to talk about criminals because now all of a sudden, all of them were in jail, but the work continued. We never stopped. And when he came back from Robben Island, as we were meeting them at the airport in Durban, Louis Porter, he said, "But comrade, we're supposed to be arriving together. How did they leave you behind?" I said, "But I'm a nurse. Nurses are not part of politics. We don't know politics as nurses." But we really had a pleasant journey, as much as times were challenging, because we're not only fighting the Nationalist Party, we're also fighting other organizations. Thank you. With those words, I want to comfort the family. I would ask them to read Psalm 103, because they've been privileged to be with Vijay and saw all what he did and the fact that he looked after Madiba. May the Lord bless his soul and give him eternal peace. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Tommy, and for your leadership also in the Progressive Nurses Forums and ultimately helping us to develop the better health system. I'm going to quickly move on to, I do apologize time-wise that, comrades, we are running a bit beyond time. I know it's a very personal and emotive process with Comrade Vijay and other lost comrades, as we heard of also Comrade Comfort and Gidi from this morning. But if we can just please keep to the time. Dr. Krish Vallabhji was also a major stalwart in the progressive struggle and worked very closely with Dr. Vijay Ramlakan, Dr. Rafiq Bismillah, and other comrades in their health worker movement. In fact, we had a lot of rivalry issues at that stage, which we ultimately pieced over when Mvuyo Tom became the president of ultimately a united NAMDA and a united South African Health Workers Congress. Dr. Krish Valabji, the former president of the South African Health Workers Congress, the floor is yours to talk about your time with Dr. Vijay Ramlakan. Dr. Krish Valabji.
Thanks, Barry. Good afternoon, members of the Vijay Ramlakan family, comrades and friends, all protocol observed. Really, thank you, comrades, for the opportunity to say a few words on behalf of the South African Health Workers Congress at this memorial service. My relationship to Vijay has been close to 40 years now, and over the decades, I've kind of had opportunities to get to know him better and work more closely with him. The first was in 1981. In 1981, I qualified in Ireland and returned to start my internship at King Edward Hospital. And I soon learned that this was not only my internship as a medical doctor, but also my internship as an activist within the country. In that year, Natal Health Workers Association, under the leadership of Vijay and others that were based at the medical school in King Edward, had started a petition campaign for the reinstatement of Comrade Pravin Gordhan, who had been dismissed as a pharmacist at King Edward Hospital. And that was my first encounter with Vijay. Vijay very firmly believed that health is more than just the absence of disease, and that you cannot achieve optimal health and well-being in the absence of social justice and democracy. And COVID has taught us the importance of putting health in the hands of the people. Though he was a doctor and later a lieutenant general in the army, he recognized the importance of mobilizing all categories of health workers in the struggle for better health and more broadly for a non-racial democratic South Africa. He was very supportive of health worker organizations that were growing throughout the country in the 1980s. And this culminated in the launch of SAWCO, the South African Health Workers Congress, in 1989, and which together with other progressive health organizations then formed an important part of the mass democratic movement and UDF and the rolling mass action campaigns in the late 80s. My second opportunity to work closely with Vijay came in 1992, when both of us ended up in Natal Medical School as postgraduate students in community health. And I'm sure Professor Jinabai will talk a bit more about that. But that was a great opportunity to spend time with Vijay and get to know him, together with others like Urmila Sankar, Priscilla Ramdas, Dr. Pren Naikar, the son of the late ANC and SSCP comrade MP Naikar, who also played a major role in the ANC command in exile and later in the military service. So Vijay and I, we got to know each other very well in this period. And in the early 90s, both of us were in different ways part of formations that were starting to think about how to engage the state to try and enter a new phase in our struggle. And Vijay, of course, never completed his studies because he was redeployed into the army. Then in 2009, 2010, Vijay, while in the army, decided to get the history of military health in South Africa documented. And he crafted a much more expanded vision for this project, a vision that captured the historical developments of not only what was the SADF, but also brought in the history of the liberation movements in exile and their health services, as well as the history of progressive health worker formations in the country. And Vijay formed a small project team, and I was privileged to be part of this team. And in true military style and disciplined, Vijay managed this project from start to finish and got the book done, which was close to 770 pages, and it was done in record time. And the project and the book had all the attributes of Vijay all over it: commitment, discipline, attention to detail, visionary, ability to take projects to completion, and the recognition of the importance of documenting our history. So comrades, I've been really privileged and honored to have known and worked with Vijay over the last 4 decades. I have really a great appreciation for his humility, his willingness to listen and engage, His commitment to the cause always came first, and his integrity as a comrade. He was a real role model for leadership, and he always put the country first. And he will always be remembered for his major contribution to the struggle. But most importantly, underlying that iron discipline and strength of character was a very deep and passionate concern for the plight of the poor and the most vulnerable in our society. And that's what drove his behavior and actions. We have lost a comrade, but Vijay will always live on as a revolutionary symbol, as a courageous and committed leader that lived and led with the values that so many fought for and died for. So on behalf of the comrades of South African and Health Workers Congress, we want to convey our sincere condolences to the immediate and extended family of Vijay, his comrades and friends, as we all struggle to come to terms with his sudden and tragic passing away. Amba Gashle, Comrade Vijay, thank you.
Thanks, Comrade Krish Vallabhji, for those really sobering words in terms of the early formations of the progressive health movements in this country. Prof. Nodi Jinabai played an important role in many of our lives as a colleague, introducing us to public health. And we were grateful that Robben Island changed Vijay's ideas, because before he went to Robben Island, he was keen on becoming a surgeon. And unfortunately, that got cut short on his detention. He was almost on his way to doing his part 1, I guess, following in the footsteps of other colleagues in surgery. But when he came off from Robben Island, he joined community health. And I'm going to hand over now to Prof. Jinabai to tell us a bit about his relationship from an academic point of view and other measures in terms of housing struggles and community struggles in the Durban area in the 80s. Prof. Jinabai, former head of community medicine at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, Nelson Mandela School of Medicine. Prof. Jinabai.
Thank you very much, program directors. I acknowledge Dr. Sibongseni, Barry Kistusamy, and all the other MCs, as well as acknowledge all the other dignitaries and all protocol observed. First of all, I'd like to just begin by our condolences to Sandy and the children on behalf of all the colleagues and colleagues who worked with Vijay Ramlak, the medical school, and worked with Vijay in many of the community-based organizations, the housing, and all the different underground and above ground mass democratic structures that Vijay worked with us and for us both during his time as a medical student and as a doctor, as well as during his period that when he joined the medical school in the Department of Community Health. Friends and colleagues, our nation and our noble profession, the health sciences profession, the medical profession, has lost a beloved, dedicated soul, one who was deeply committed to the cause of social justice, democracy, and the creation of a non-racial, non-sexist society, which are the necessary and sufficient preconditions for a healthy society. Health not just in physical terms, but also in emotional, psychological, and spiritual terms. The full spectrum of comprehensive health of individuals, families, and communities is what Vijay stood for and was deeply committed to. Not only that, not only was he a dedicated and socially conscious and committed doctor, but also, as Rudolf Virchow 2 centuries earlier has expounded, he saw the powerful connection, the nexus between politics and society, the wider society on the one hand, and health status and medical and health systems on the other hand. And this is the connection that Vijay Ramlakan, and this is the legacy he leaves behind of actually for many generations of medical students and doctors. That relationship is profoundly important for us to fully create not just a democratic and just society, but also a healthy individuals, families, and communities. During his struggle period, as an activist, Vijay clearly saw that without a democratic, egalitarian social system, the health of our people would not thrive. And in the pre-1994 period, in the 1970s and 80s and the early 90s, Vijay clearly saw the relation and the need to be an activist, not just with the stethoscope and the needle and the syringe as a health professional, as a doctor, but also as an activist in the political movement, in the mass democratic structures of the housing organizations, the NAMDA, the Health Professional Alternative Medical Association that we had formed, but also in the underground activities of Umkhonto where to bring about social justice through all forms of struggle. This simple, profound realization of the relationship between politics and health motivated him to join Umkhonto to transform the apartheid states towards a democratic society. These underground activities saw him being incarcerated on Robben Island together with other comrades, including Comrade Lomo and several others. After this, he joined, as other speakers have mentioned, the Department of Community Health in the early 1980s, 1982, Durban Medical School, to continue his deep passion to heal the nation, not only from a social, democratic, and socialist perspective, but also to deepen his professional knowledge and skills as South Africa was painfully transitioning towards a democratic society. During the years at the medical school, he, together with other comrades such as Sami and many others, was actively involved in numerous community-based projects. These programs fulfill the true vision and practice of community health. The Department of Community Health, or social medicine as it was previously called, was something that Vijay understood very profoundly and deeply, not just at an intellectual level, not just at the scientific level, but at the level of the heart and the mind, meaning that he was able to take the practice of medicine, of healthcare, including the preventive and promotive aspects of health, not just the curative, pecuniary component of medical care, and take it into the communities in numerous community-based projects, and ensuring that families and individuals were able to have all the components of essential comprehensive primary healthcare: housing, water and sanitation, good nutrition, etc., etc. And that's the vision that he practiced during the early 80s while he was based in the Department of Community Health. The program of social medicine, as it was previously called, focused therefore not just on improving the living and working conditions, but as Vijay clearly demonstrated in his practice, both in the department and community, that improving the public health, individual health of families was fundamental to improving the health of the nation. And therefore, in that period of the 1980s, long before the movement called the social determinants of health and the sustainable development goals, which were adopted a decade later, long before these became fashionable, Comrade Vijay was already preaching and practicing these mantras, these principles, and these practices, influencing many generations of medical and doctors during his sojourn in the Department of Community Health, and even while he was as a medical student, as previous speakers, Comrade Mvoyo Tom has talked about. And therefore, during this particular period in the Department of Community Health, he was promoting social medicine and at the same time continuing to participate in the democratic struggle in reshaping the policies and practices and the governing structures, not only for health, but also for the wider society. This is the intellectual and activist legacy that Vijay leaves behind, which continued and was acknowledged by the liberation movement when he was promoted eventually to Surgeon General of SAMS, the medical wing of the military. After 1994 and after his promotion as Surgeon General, he continued to honorably serve as Mandela's doctor and distinguished himself as a caring, compassionate, dedicated healer. In conclusion, these qualities that several speakers have already talked about, his humility, his quiet, almost introverted dedication. He was not a robust activist or vociferous at all, very quiet, very dedicated. These qualities saw him first and foremost being able to interact all the way from individuals, from poor communities, all the way to government structures, all the way up in the military ranks to the level of Surgeon General, but eventually to become the doctor and the healthcare professional for our first president, Madiba. These are the qualities that we pay tribute to today. I was fortunate to interact with him not only in the professional sense, in the political sense. I was fortunate even in the early 1980s to interact with him because I was fortunate in that both of us, his family, he and Sandy, and my family and my wife, we both lived in the same building in Asheville Heights. And I think the security branch were very confused when they used to regularly visit me, to detain me during that period. They were also not sure what was going on in that particular building during that particular period. So the dimension that I want to conclude on now is we see Vijay not just as a comrade and as an activist and as a health professional, but profoundly as a deeply spiritual soul, caring and competent about humanity and making tremendous sacrifices for our nation. From a spiritual perspective, as mentioned before, the legacy he leaves behind is not just for all South Africans and the successful overthrow of the apartheid state and the establishment of a democratic non-racial state, but by establishing a benchmark of dedicated service, honesty and integrity, and a character and moral conduct which was totally beyond any blemish or of any reproach. He was always a person of honor and integrity, never stooping to any cheap politicking or any form of corruption or seeking any personal glory, which is a very important legacy given as the Queen of KwaZulu-Natal earlier mentioned, Sihle Sikalala, in this difficult period of corruption that our president is trying to eradicate and root out this particular cancer. For the health professional, he serves as a beacon of hope that there is life beyond just being a health professional, serve the wider community and people rather than seeking wealth and fame, which is unfortunately the current mantra in the medical and health profession. As I've mentioned earlier, from the spiritual perspective, from the spiritual tradition that his family came from, he fulfilled what one may call his dharma. That is, his mission in life was to serve the people, serve the community, and serve the nation. And this dharma he fulfilled to his full life's mission must all strive to fulfill. As his soul transitions to a new phase in its journey, and we need to acknowledge that in certain spiritual traditions, this is just a passing phase. Vijay Ramlakhan in the physical body is now living and transitioning to another phase in his life's journey of his soul. And as he transitions to the news in his journey, we pray that he will achieve not just the political and social liberation while he was in the physical body on this planet Earth, but in his new journey, in the new phase in which he will reach full liberation, full moksha, and liberation from the cycle of births and deaths. We are certain that in new phase that he is, the place that he is going to in heaven, his life will continue to inspire many, many millions of Africans, dedicated service to all the people of our beloved country during this difficult period we are going through of the COVID pandemic and the corruption that earlier speakers mentioned. So in conclusion, Chairperson, and to the family, to Sandy and the family, we pay respects and condolences. We thank Sandy and the family and the children for allowing Vijay to dedicate his life of service to all of us, and we then pray that they will have the courage and be able to sustain themselves as they prepare for the next phase. Hamakashle, Comrade Vijay, Altua Continua. Thank you, Comrade Chair. Back to you.
We are going to face some load shedding problems. Thanks, Prof. Jinabai. I'm going to hand over to Dr. Rob Dyer to conclude this part of the session, and then we'll just read out some colleagues from Cuba who have sent messages of support. Dr. Rob Dyer from the National Medical and Dental Association, the former General Secretary. Rob?
Thank you, Comrade Barry. Comrade Sibongiseni Dlomo, dignitaries, all due protocol observed. It's a great privilege to be here, and my heartfelt condolences to Vijay's family. The National Medical and Dental Association no longer exists, but during the 80s, we were certainly active, and we worked with Comrade Krish and the Health Workers Congress closely, and with the other organizations that have already been mentioned. I will be brief because I think load shedding is going to catch me very soon, but we've lost a true friend and comrade. I met Vijay first in 1982 when I returned to my hometown of Durban and lectured at the department, in the Department of Medicine at the Natal Medical School, as it was then called. And we know the political activism there, and I think that all of us cut our teeth in many ways in the 1980s, in those turbulent years. I've got a slightly more lighthearted story to tell about Vijay, because I think many of the political aspects of Vijay's fantastic life have already been covered, and he really does follow in the tradition of truly revolutionary doctors internationally, and we can name them if we wish. But Vijay is one of those, and he leaves behind a fantastic legacy. But the one story I want to tell is that in 1983, he and I, amongst other friends, traveled down to the launch of the UDF in Cape Town, Mitchell's Plain. And interestingly, although we were both NAMDA members, and NAMDA was founded in 1982, although we were both members, NAMDA was never a formal affiliate of the UDF, although we were obviously comradely and fully in support, but it was a strategic move not to be affiliated. But in registering to go into the launch, one actually had to be affiliated with an organization. And we walked in, and there was no problem with our individual credentials, but we simply weren't being allowed in. And we'd come in with different crowds of friends, and they were obviously attached to other organizations, and no problem. And Vijay looked at me and he said, Health Workers Congress. So I said, so my great apologies, Krish, but we stole your ID, but it was really to a good cause. And Vijay and I had a wonderful day. And of course, the history books tell what that led to, an internal mobilization. Vijay and I worked very closely on many occasions with aspects of workers' health, some union meetings that we had attended. And Tami Skanjana has already mentioned the work in the townships of predominantly youngsters, teenagers being shot with pellets, wounded. We had to go into areas, Guamashu, Umlazi, Lamont, on numerous occasions to treat youngsters, 2 o'clock in the morning because they'd been attacked, and the rest of it. One other thing that I remembered when I heard of Vijay's passing was that on occasion he borrowed my car for work that had to be done. It was distribution of pamphlets and things. And then about 6 months down the line, I said, Vijay, I see that the security branch have started to look for a little green Mazda that's been active around Chatsworth. So I think we should just park it in the garage for now. And of course, we both agreed. It showed Vijay's commitment, not just to health, but to revolutionary activity at all its levels. My friend and comrade, I salute you. My heartfelt condolences to the family. Hambagashle Vijay, Aluta Konchanya.
Thanks, Rob, and really appreciate the time that we spent. We do have some messages of support from Dr. Carlos Mas Zabalala and Dr. Felipe Delgado and Marisa Jacobs, comrades who send their love and greetings and condolences to the extended family, to Charlotte and to Sandy Africa, and to the children, and also to all the comrades. We will put their message onto the chat and ultimately onto the webcast that Ricky is pulling together. So without further ado, thanks to the comrades from Cuba. Vijay was part of the reception committee that hosted the first Cuban delegation to South Africa. And it was an historic moment from us where we celebrated a range of issues, including the Cuto Carnaval battle in southern Angola. Comrade Chair and Comrade Lomo, back to you. And thanks for the colleagues for giving in the professional and collegial side of Vijay Ramlakan. Ambagashle, Comrade Vijay Ramlakan. Back to you, Comrade Lomo. Over.
Thank you very much for those kind comments from the professionals, comrades and friends who knew very well our dear comrade during the time of the struggle at medical school and beyond. We will now have a revolutionary song. Unfortunately, we are all over the country. We will not be singing it. It will be sung for us. We can just join it in humming and being part of it. And then we'll continue the program. We will have the family thereafter to have words to us. Okay, I am guided that we have now ended our revolutionary song. Let me then apologize that we would have loved to have the family at the end. However, there are certain comrades who are ministers who will not be able to engage now because they are still rounding up in the sitting. So we will now be requesting the members of the family to then make their contributions, their comments, and probably some of them will be even making thanks messages. So let me then allow all members of the family to come in the way the program is showing. Thanks. According to the program, we'll start with the Vidya Naikar, followed by Comrade Sandy.
Shanas, will you load the voice note?
Yes. This opportunity is now given to the family members who are in the program. Is Vidya Naika the first one, but any order in case maybe there's still a challenge with Comrade Vidya Naika.
Namaste to all who have joined in. It is with a heavy heart that I perform this task. Dear departed Vijayanand Ram Lakhan, beloved members of the family, comrades, and all other protocol observed, my sympathies and condolences to you. May you grow stronger from yet another challenge. We are all hurting as Vijay's death leaves a great void. I am Vidya Naika, cousin of Vijayanand. I intend to cover a part of Vijay's life that is undocumented. Thank you to the immediate family and the organizing committee for giving me this space. The success of Vijay's life was born out of richness of his childhood. Vijay, as I will continue to address him, was born into a life of struggle, living through the experiences of the victims of the Group Areas Act of the 1950s. Vijay's parents, Rajmani and Inderjit Ram Lakhan, had to endure the painful struggle of finding a home. Uncle Inder was a tailor, and he had to locate where it was best for his trade. Their life was one of survival. The enrichment of children's lives were not a consideration. Auntie Rajmani, Vijay's mom, was a strong matriarch who held her family together, tenaciously protecting her family. The struggle of the uprooted people left an unerasable scar. This horrendous monster still lurks amongst us, as the plight of the homeless people is sadly ongoing. The children of the 50s fought a hard battle and grew into men and women who refused to wear the shackles of the past. To use the words of Martin Luther King, I quote, "One's dignity may be assaulted, vandalized, cruelly mocked, but it can never be taken away unless it is surrendered." Close quote. Vijay's parents, together with his maternal grandmother, Mrs. Marhaj, and her family of Amshlatuzana, nurtured the family on love. On this rock of love, the family stood steadfast. No hardship was able to break down the dignity of this family. Having little comforts to enjoy, Vijay spent all his time reading. This remarkable habit of reading gave Vijay satisfaction and a window to the world of knowledge. From the very first time Vijay's mom placed a book on his lap, he showed tendencies of a profound ability to read, understand, and question. He enjoyed explaining concepts to anyone who listened to him. As a child, he was always inquiring the meaning of abstract words. My late parents, Manohar and Chandra Sumera, were regular visitors at the Ram Lakhan home. My dad, being an educator, would check on the schoolwork of the children. All the children in the Ram Lakhan home performed exceptionally well. Vijay displayed a spark of enthusiasm for knowledge. My dad, hoping to harness this enthusiasm, offered to take him away to a more conducive environment. Vijay's parents trusted that he would be in good hands in the care of my parents. Without much discussion, arrangements were made to have Vijay transferred to the drift school in Amkumas. An unexplainable bond grew between Vijay and his uncle Manohar Sumera. The interaction between Vijay and his uncle was unique. He would sit on the floor and read. He would ask my dad if he could predict the outcomes of the stories, and he would go on giving views closeness. He joined the family in Amkumas Drift. In the weekends, the number doubled as students found this a safe haven where they could study and share their experiences. This home was filled with professional adults who would engage in powerful discussions. Politics of the country was a common point of discussion. On a lighter side, I was tasked to see that Vijay did his schoolwork and fell asleep on his own bed. His sleeping habit was always a problem. This is true by his own admission in the opening lines of his book, Mandela's Last Years. He says, "I have no trouble falling asleep, and when I sleep, it is the sleep of the dead." Close quote. He was already a top achiever in Durban. To the great disappointment of his teachers, he left Durban to continue his schooling in Amkumas. Vijay was the top achiever of his class every year. He received accolades in every field. Vijay's school reports from class 1 are safely housed in the Sumera home. Some luck, it was saved from the devastating flood in Amkumas in 1987. The flood completely destroyed the Sumera Kutum. I can't say that Vijay was altogether happy to be away from his parents. But after every holiday, he would return to the farm without resisting. I often wondered what the attraction was. All I can think of is the number of books that he still had to read. He was at the Amkumas Drift School and the Naidu Memorial Secondary Schools from where he matriculated. He went on to studying medicine at the Natal University. I am unable to relate the humiliation and extremes of abuse that he witnessed in the community and in the country. The activities Vijay engaged in was geared towards making the change he wanted to see. He was chosen by the Almighty to serve a greater purpose. To conclude, again in the words of Martin Luther King, there comes a time when the cup of endurance runs over and men are no longer willing to plunge into the abyss of despair. Go well, dear brother. Your work is done. You went the extra mile to make us proud. Thank you.
So emotional from the cousin. Thank you very much for that. May we then allow, I think it's Shanrita Michaels, to read a message on behalf of Comrade Sandy Africa. Sorry, I didn't pronounce the surname well.
I'm on this side, if you can hear me. I don't know if you can see my video. Hello?
Yes, we can hear the voice.
Okay, I will. I wrote a little dedication to my brother. Yes, I wrote a little dedication to my brother because it is quite difficult for us at this stage. We are unable to attend the funeral because we live in Belgium and there are no flights. So it's quite a blow to us. And this is what I have to say to him. My dearest Vijay Bhai, words alone cannot express our distress and devastation of not being able to be physically present and say our final goodbyes to you. As each star comes out to shine, as the wind rustles across the land, and as the moonlight sweeps across the room, we will be thinking of you. When the sun burns its morning greeting, when the birds chirp and swoop through the sky, and when the leaves of the tree dances through the air, we'll be thinking of you. You, along with other great comrades, fought for a world full of rainbows. You fought for harmony and comradeship to echo throughout our land. You fought for each man to have a voice of hope, a voice of peace. You fought for everyone to have enough equality, chance and luck so that we would not have any further needs. You fought for every man to have an equal heart. You fought for us to be instruments marching in a common band, playing songs of hope and peace. We, as your siblings and comrades, are not ready to let you go. We will keep you in our hearts. That's where you will live on forever. We will be watching you from a distance, just as you and the other departed ones will be watching us. Every day, every hour, and every moment, we will be thinking and loving you from a distance, just like you will be thinking, loving, and guiding us from a distance. Not having you here will sometimes tear us up inside. It's a pain that we will travel with us on our life's journeys until we take our last breaths and join you. We will see you in our thoughts and dreams. You won't be there physically to comfort us, but you will from a distance, and we will feel it from a distance. You have our hearts in your hand as we have yours in our hands, all from a distance. We truly own each other's love. We will always be a 10-man strong family living on forever in each other's hearts. Rest in peace, my big booty. I'm not sure how I will handle your absence each time I visit South Africa, not seeing your smiling face and excited, not getting your hug. Rest now, you've earned your wings. You are now the angel in heaven we know, loving you forever from a distance. Thank you.
No. Thank you very much, Shanrita. Our words of comfort to you. You are just as brave as Comrade Vijay. For you to be able to read right through the message of support and condolence under such difficult conditions. It runs in the family, this bravery. Thank you very much for that. May we now move on to Comrade Charlotte.
Good evening, Comrade Program Director, Dr. Lomo, comrades, and all protocol observed. Vijay, as we celebrate your life today, I am reminded that we are celebrating a legend, not just any legend, our own legend. It is hard for me to stand here and try to enumerate all the good things that you were. For to us, they are endless. To many, you were a hero. To some, a friend, a colleague, a boss, a mentor, a comrade. To us, you were everything, a husband, a dad, a brother, a friend, a father, even to the fatherless. Thursday, the 27th of August will remain a fateful day for us. When I walked into the hospital, I expected to hear you say, "What took you so long?" Vijay, I didn't think, even when I was led to the side ward, when the doctor knelt before me, that was the day I will see you lying there and silent, never to see you again. I came thinking I was going to walk out of that hospital's doors with you. It pains me that you are not here with us, that only your memory is our keepsake, with which we will never part. We know that God has you in his keeping. We will have you in our hearts, and there you will always be alive. In saying goodbye, I want to read a poem by Trem-Tiarati von Reichenbach, Spirit. I know that no matter what, you will always be with me. Life has separated us. I know it is only your soul that has said goodbye to your body, but your spirit will be with me always. When I see a bird chirping on a nearby branch, I will know it is you singing to me. When a butterfly brushes gently by so carefully, I will know it is you assuring me you are now pain-free. When the gentle fragrance of a flower catches my attention, I will know it is you reminding me to appreciate the simple things in life. When the sun shining through my window awakens me, I will feel the warmth of your love. When I hear the rain pitter-patter against my windowsill, I will hear your words of wisdom, and I will remember what you taught me so well, that without rain, trees cannot grow. Without rain, flowers cannot bloom. Without life's challenges, I cannot grow strong. When I look out to the sea, I will think of your love for us, your family. When I think of the mountains, their majesty and magnificence, I will think of your courage for your country, South Africa. No matter where I am, your spirit will be beside me, for I know that no matter what, you will always be with me. We love you. May your precious soul rest in peace. Thank you.
Amen. We are here to comfort the family, but we are really so assured that the family is going to be able to go through this with some good support if the family members are able to articulate such comforting words to themselves and to all of us. Another family member that would have some speech is Comrade Derek Kisondat. I hope I'm pronouncing the surname properly. Now I give the opportunity to Mr. Derek Kisondat from the family.
Thank you, Program Director. You've done a good job pronouncing the name. All protocol observed. Good evening, all. I greet you all in the loving name of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Thank you for the opportunity to pay tribute to Lieutenant General Ramlakan. We were first cousins. He is the son of my mom's eldest sister and was the apple of my aunt's eye. Our families spent a lot of time together as we were growing up in Durban. We have very good memories of those early years. When I look back on the humble beginnings in our lives, I am filled with pride to note the achievements of General Ramlakan. He earned the respect of his comrades and colleagues. He was fearless in his contribution to the countries to dismantle apartheid, has described by many as a brilliant man. He saw the problems for what it was, but at the same time, he was committed in finding solutions. If you met General Ramlakan at any time, he was always distinguished and respectful. Vijay's sudden passing away at the age of 62 years has left a vacuum in the family. It will be very difficult to fill this space. We encourage everyone to take a lesson or two from the life and times of General Ramlakan and to play your part in lifting the nation brand of our beautiful country. We thank God for blessing us with Vijay for the past number of years. We pray that the comfort of God will strengthen the family during this time of bereavement. Your prayers and support mean the world to the family. May the soul of Vijay Ramlakan rest in peace. I thank you all.
Thank you, Derek. You were also very in a good spirit when you actually, on behalf of the family, were in the SAM's memorial service. Thank you very much for remaining strong despite the challenges that we have. May we have another Derek? This time is Derek Naidu, one of the butterfly terrorists, who is also going to have a word or two. Comrade Derek. After Comrade Derek, may I remind Comrade Tutu that you will have to take over Comrade Tutu as soon as Comrade Derek finishes. Thank you very much, terrorist.
Thank you very much, Comrade Commander. So this is a sad day for us. But let me start by saying how PJ greeted me. He says, "How's the days?" That's how Comrade PJ greeted me. I can still hear this greeting ringing in my ear constantly. How's the days? For me and countless others that was honored by his acquaintance, Comrade PJ is not dead. He's not gone, for he's still here with us. His spirit will live on forever. This gallant hero of our struggle is a product of the East Chapter. That's how complete an Indian township created by the apartheid government to celebrate these. For me and countless others, the Indian population created in white and colored and black townships. Yeah,
Comrade Derek,
no boundaries.
Off your
The townships of Amdazi, Lamontville, Wentworth, and Indian township created by the apartheid white and black townships. Comrade PJ, however, knew no boundaries. For the Jude Francis, David Madurai, Richard Value, Lenny Naidu, Raymond Bell became his playground. The theater of revolution. Jude Francis and I were recruited in the early 1980s to form an MK unit under the command of Vijay Ramlakan. We never met Vijay, but will receive instructions from him by our commander on what needs to be in the early 1980s to form an MK unit under elections. We will receive instructions to carry out an operation that will send a clear political message to the enemy, indicating that we are not in favor of this election, which entrench political power in the hands of the minority, whilst limiting the political voice of the country's colored and Indian population groups, and excluded the black majority. Our unit decided to target Mr. Rajvansi's house, the then leader of the South African Indian Council. We would be sending out a message to the South African of Indian descent that the majority of South Africans were not in favor of this sham democracy, that we were opposed to the divide and rule tactics of the enemy, and that the Indian people mobilized under the Natal Indian Congress was not in favor of the exclusion of the black majority. This, comrades, was PJ's political message to us. This was in line with the ANC's armed propaganda and non-collaboration operation strategy at that time. The strategy sought to limit military activity to the kind that facilitated political mobilization. It is in this way that Comrade Vijay baptized us as a unit in the fires of revolution. As a military strategist, he aligned himself with the notion that the political base will serve as a foundation for sustained armed struggle and ultimate seizure of power. Suffice to say, our operation was successfully carried out under his command. In 1985 again, we witnessed heightened political activity with the enemy imposing a state of emergency. Many comrades ended up in jail under the infamous Section 29 of the Internal Security Act. Many will recall this act denied detainees access to the courts or legal advisor or to see their family. The jails became torture chambers with the courts doing the bidding of the apartheid system. So Comrade Vijay sent another instruction to say that we have to send a political message to the police and the courts that no amount of arrests, torture will stop the rising tide of the revolution. Our unit decided to target the Chatsworth courthouse. Comrade Vijay agreed with our target. The bombing of the courthouse was also very significant for those that were arrested and were in jail, giving them hope that the ANC had not abandoned them. Our mission under Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan was successful, mission accomplished. Members of our unit are deeply saddened by the passing away of such a great political and military strategist. We never met him, never did during our operation, but his instructions were clear: non-collaboration and armed propaganda. We will miss Comrade Vijay very much. We were on Robben Island when the Gulela 9, all MK operatives were gunned down in June 1988. When we read the news, I recall meeting Comrade Vijay in the hospital section to discuss this incident. He was in deep shock and he spoke after a long silence and he said, "Sorry, Comrade D's. By the looks of things, these comrades were ambushed. The spy must have informed the enemy that they were going to cross. Our movement has been infiltrated and our operatives are being sent on missions like cows to the slaughterhouse." Comrades Lenny, Makosi, Nyoka, Lendiwe Mtembu, June Rose Kotoza were killed in the first ambush. 4 days later, Pongani Gaza, Bruce Tenjwayo, Sriso Kumano, Jabulani Sibisi, and Joseph Boxer Mtembu were ambushed and killed. How could this have happened? Nobody can explain how comrades can be dispatched 4 days later on the same route where an ambush had taken place. Comrade Vijay was devastated. He felt that he had let us down. He has let these people, these comrades down. The former police colonel, torturer and assassin, Eugene de Kock, claimed victory. The blood of our comrades was spilled, leaving dark patches on the ground as their legacy. We are not going to say goodbye, Comrade Vijay. We'll be saying we'll see you later, for you left us too early and with a lot of unfinished business. You cheated on us. And you left early to rest. For your mind was heavy and I saw your shoulders droop. The mission was setting up of the structures to benefit the children and the soldiers. A mission, not for you, but for everyone else. How selfless, comrade. We will have to fulfill this mission in some way or the other, and that of the vision of Butterfly. I must finally share this with you, comrades. We had a chat group called Butterfly or Foundation. Its purpose was to discuss the writing of a book that will capture our story. On now, who will tell this story? Vijay was in the chat group, affording us all advices on the pandemic. I share with you this book. So soon after lockdown, and he said this. I consider you with all my I share with you lockdown 2 was announced. And he said this. I was to say that there is no need for us to lock down and mama jumbo anymore. People who have been lectured on public health in the last 2 weeks, there's been no real observances in the township besides distancing, masks, personal hygiene. Let us try to limit further economic damage and fight for an end to poverty, joblessness, and corruption. I fervently hope that the civil servants are all ordered to end their holidays. This, for me, comrades, sums up Comrade personal hygiene, what Comrade VJ stood for, eradicating poverty and to end joblessness and corruption. Finally, there was another post that he had put in, and I don't think this for me, comrades, sums up what Comrade VJ, whether he was giving us a message of sorts, but he said, people are concerned about the second wave. For us butterflies, we are the highest risk group in joblessness and corruption. Finally, put in his ideas. I don't know whether he was sending us a message. He probably knew something that we didn't. People are concerned about this. Fairly well, my commander. Your day is done. Rest in peace. Say hi to all the butterflies up there at the highest risk group for all infectious this year. Your day is done. Rest in peace. Over and come. Other butterflies that have gone to this. Our sincere condolences to the Ramakan family, to all members of Operation Butterfly in Konto overseas. We miss you, Comrade Vijay. We will miss you, Ambagashe Konto.
Good evening to all in attendance, particularly Comrade Vijay's family. Allow me to say all protocol observed. And let me convey my deepest condolences to Comrade Vijay's family, comrades, and friends. We will now have tributes from comrades and structures of our mass democratic movements. Vijay was my first boss in my first formal employment. And what a boss he was. He dragged me with him all the way to the dock. Firstly, we'll have a tribute from the SACP, and that will be rendered by Comrade Lichisa Tsenodi. Comrade Lichisa.
Thank you very much, Program Director, Comrade Dudu. May I also pass our revolutionary greetings and condolences to Comrade Sandy, the children, and the rest of the family. The South African Communist Party is saddened by the loss of Comrade Vijay, a revolutionary, no doubt, an internationalist, no doubt. We are saddened because the period we are at right now is one that needed people of his making, of the kind of clay he was made of. Now that he has gone, we promise his spear will not touch the ground. He represented those that the movement expected of its best, that in working towards the vision of an unracial, non-sexist, and democratic, hopefully egalitarian society, should behave the manner in which he did. The personal accolades that he received in his life showed the kind of quality of a person that he was. We knew Comrade Vijay in the late 70s and early 80s. And in fact, in the work that began to happen at that time, which was a culmination, or rather more appropriately, a milestone in the coming together of the four pillars of the struggle: the international isolation of the apartheid regime, the mass work that needed to be done in the country to mobilize the people, the underground work that was necessary to act in a manner that the enemy then would not be able to notice, and if they do, that it would not hold the programs that we were undertaking. And of course, the military campaign, guerrilla warfare against the regime. The interaction of these four pillars were critical. He played a critical role in almost all four of them in one way or another, including in the manner in which some of the work he did was communicated in the country and elsewhere. Vijay, like cadres of his period, understood that organization to the revolution is like oxygen to the body. If you deprive the body of oxygen, it's the same as if you are not organized, that the revolution will not succeed. We hope to restate the necessity for that, and also to say that some of the defeats, the apparent victories of the then regime in the past did not discourage comrades, because they did not assume, because there were defeats in certain respects, that the undertaking that we had needed to proceed, that we should not give up, that the struggle must continue. And this is the sort of spirit that drove him. His confidence, quiet assertiveness. And by the way, for a moment when Professor Nodi Jinabai was describing him, I thought he was describing his wife, who fits that description well, Sandy. Quiet, soft-spoken, but firm and grounded in her own determination and revolutionary readiness. We are glad to have this opportunity to celebrate Comrade Vijay's life. It is also appropriate that we look at him. I agree with Dr. Rob Dyer, who with Vijay and others, we were together in Rocklands in Cape Town when we launched the UDF. And that in the reflections of Che Guevara's life, he is said to have noted also that heroes are not heroes because they are perfect. Heroes are heroes because they overcome whatever weakness they have. And that it is when they have overcome that or made effort to do so. In addition to, secondly, when we look at their overall contribution in the struggle, that the only thing that comes across on us is to smile with pride of the value of their contributions. When we describe him as being a humble man, it is as a result of what I often think of him also, amongst others who could have taken a different route in life, made lots of money or anything of that sort, but who committed class suicide, who saw his life in the life of the poor and destitute, in the life of those who our systems in the past were wrong, and now
Comrade Sonali, unmute yourself.
It's your system automatically unmuting me. Sorry about it. And I'm suggesting that in remembering him, let's build a monument for his commitment and working with integrity in a variety of places that he worked to demonstrate that that is in fact the expectation of the people. And that is the only reason that we will be able to reclaim the trust of the masses of the people who still, and have done so for years now, trust in the revolutionary movement. We wish the family well, that even as we reflect, they will also have an opportunity to remember the good memories surely that they have about him, and that will give them the courage to continue with the struggle. Thank you very much, Program Director. We appreciate the opportunity and the moment, and thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Lichisa. Next, we'll have a representative from the EPPA, Comrade Mpho Masimula. Comrade Mpho, are you available? Are you ready?
You must unmute.
Hello? 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 Ah. Oh.
Move Comrade Tutu. We'll come back and check him. Move to other speakers. We'll come back to him and prepare him for that.
Hello?
I heard him say hello.
Hello? Hello, Comrade Tutu.
Oh, you're audible. Proceed with your message.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, thank you very much, Program Director, members of the Revolutionary Alliance, the Mass Democratic Movement, and the family, Comrade Sandy, the children, and members of the family of Comrade Vijay. Today is a sad day. Today, we are devastated by the unexpected passing of one of the greatest South Africans, Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan. A lot of speakers have already mentioned about his revolutionary prowess, you know, his somber mood, and also his outstanding work in the democratic movement. The Ex-Political Prisoners Association and all of its members, we deep down our revolutionary banners in an extreme sorrow as we mourn at the loss of our most revered soldier of the people, the ever humble, the ever heroic patriot, and an exemplary mega comrade. That is Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan. We worked with him on various projects. At Robben Island, Comrade Vijay was working at the hospital section. Comrade Derek has also mentioned that. Assisting the doctors and also doing the underground revolutionary work of the underground. When comrades have been taken or are sick to the hospital, clandestinely, Comrade Vijay will meet with them and disseminate the information that will go to some other sections. The Ex-Political Prisoners Association of South Africa remembers him fondly for his singular dedication as a comrade in the struggle against apartheid and his willingness to instinctively sacrifice for his country and his readiness to help fellow South Africans in any way he could. Comrade Vijay, as many speakers have already said, he was a down-to-earth person, very quiet and a selfless leader. He passed on during the time when the country is riddled or the country is engulfed with corruption. As we will know, in his ethical life, that Comrade Vijay was anti-corruption in all of his works of life. He was very much vocal on his on corruption. For instance, Comrade Vijay, those that don't know, he masterminded actually the EPPA memorandum against corruption at Robben Island, which has led the Minister of Arts and Culture, Natim Tetwa, to institute a forensic investigation at Robben Island. So we can see what kind of a person he was. Comrade Vijay also, as a medical doctor,
He was the servant of the people as a medical doctor, and also dedicated his life in addressing the plight of hundreds of political prisoners who have been sadly forgotten by the beneficiaries of our own democracy. We worked him very closely in one of the programs of the ex-political prisoners. Comrade Vijay was very much vocal about the heritage and the legacy of political prisoners as being marginalized. Many of them have been buried as paupers. Some of them, they are unemployed. Some of them, they don't have decent housing. As Comrade Lechesa Tsenoli has already said, that he committed the class suicide. By committing the class suicide and aligning himself with the working class and those that are downtrodden. The community of ex-political prisoners will miss him. We will become very poor, actually, without, his ideas. Comrade Vijay was a revolutionary intellectual, not just a revolutionary. The association also, we would like that Comrade Sihle Zigalala, the premier of the KZN, actually should be able to honor political prisoners and Comrade Vijay in particular by renaming one of the hospitals in the KZN under his name. Many comrades have also said that that we need to have his statue in one of the government offices in the KZN, or renaming actually some of the government institutions under his name, because he contributed a lot as a revolutionary intellectual. Comrade Vijay also, in one of the clips, when we started this memorial service, they mentioned that he was the instrumental of having a project at Robben Island called the Robben Island Leadership Institute. So, unfortunately, we are so saddened that he passed on while we were still working on that project. So we believe that his ideas and the Robben Island Museum actually will honor him by honoring all of his objectives, by erecting or by authorizing the Robben Island Leadership Institute. The objective of the institute, it will serve actually as a political education to all the people of this country, to learn about political education as we have been doing at Robben Island. Actually, he went on, Comrade Vijay, to the university, the UWC, the University of Cape Town, actually, to speak to them with regard to them as accrediting the Robben Island Institute. Unfortunately, Comrade Vijay decided to mute his voice on the 27th of August while he was waiting to present actually the Leadership Institute concept to Robben Island Museum. Yesterday, he was supposed to have presented to the Robben Island Museum board. Unfortunately, he muted, his voice was muted. So the EPPA vow to carry on what he has left us to do. We will carry on all of his objectives as a revolutionary to to make Robben Island again as a place of that resembles the human spirit against the evil forces. Comrade Vijay was a quiet, serious, and compassionate human being whose strength of character was immediately evident. The EPPA commits to complete his work, and as I said before, that we will remain poorer of his absence. Comrade Vijay, actually, his integrity and dedication in the struggle was beyond question. As an MK soldier in battle, and as a prisoner on Robben Island, and as a member of the SANDF, he always displayed a true revolutionary character, befitting of our revolutionary movement, that is the African National Congress. In our sadness, we celebrate that one of us has gone on to greet the Rivonia generation that we all miss every day. Comrade Vijay, as we said, he was in preparation he was working closely with the ex-political prisoners, myself, Comrade Dr. Seth Cooper, Bafana Sitole, Comrade Wright Siahwa, Shaga Khatebe, the committee of Comrade Noti Ngobo, and Comrade Stan Mutimela. This is the executive that he left. And we vow that we will carry on, pick up the spear, and fight and take his objectives forward in the Department of Arts and Culture, and also not to forget the downtrodden political prisoners that he was so committed to assist, so that they can be able to address their socio-economic problems or challenges that are engulfing our political prisoners, because they were forgotten by the beneficiaries of this democracy. So Comrade Vijay took on. He came to say, no, we cannot stay in prison for so much years, and then coming out, instead of enjoying the fruits of democracy, comrades are now, suffering from those material conditions, that they are unemployed, they don't have any medical aid, and they don't have houses. So he was so vocal about that, to say those things must be addressed. We as the community of ex-political prisoners, we send our deepest condolences to the family, Comrade Sandy, and all the Revolutionary Alliance and the comrades. We also say that we have lost a giant, that even if during his retirement age, Comrade Vijay, he did not bring his busy program to an end. And actually, he continued to engage at every level of the society with different kind of people. As unfortunately, he decided to mute his voice on the 27th of August 2020. So we, as the political prisoners, we will continue his work, and we are saying, to the family, we are saying thank you very much for honoring us and having Comrade Vijay to be within our midst, working together with us to alleviate the socio-economic problems that are challenging all the political prisoners and the people of this country. Comrade Vijay, we are saying, hamba kahle Mkonto, hamba kahle Kabane, we will miss you. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Mpo. Indeed, we've lost a giant. We will now have a tribute from the then Azaso President and MSRC member, Comrade Dr. Joe Pahla. Over to you, Dr. Joe.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm trying to make sure that everything is fine. I hope I can be heard very clearly. Comrade Dudu, am I audible clearly?
Joe, you are. Audible,
Okay.
thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Program Director, Comrade Dudu, to the leadership of the ANC and the Alliance, to comrades, activists, especially the activists who were in the trenches with Comrade Vijay in the late 70s, in the 80s, and now until his untimely passing away. I was one of those, of course, who were very shocked to get the news about the passing of Comrade Vijay just after the 27th of August, especially that one had not been aware of any ailment which Comrade Vijay was suffering from. So indeed, it was a serious shock. Comrades shouldn't be surprised. I've just been hit by load shedding, so you'll see a bit of darkness, but nevertheless, one will carry on. Indeed, as we mourn his passing, we want to pass our condolences to his family, who will obviously miss him much more than all of us who were fond of him, especially his family, Comrade Sandy, Comrade Charlotte, the children. We indeed pass our condolences to you especially. While talking to Comrade Barry Kisnasamy about this program, it hit me actually that indeed the first time I came to know Vijay was way back in 1977. When I arrived at Alan Taylor Residence to start my medical school studies, which means indeed quite a number of years back, almost 43 years ago. Now, just to reminiscence about that encounter, the first time actually when we were doing our first year, Comrade Vijay and another comrade who became a head of psychiatry at Sfakomakhatu and Harangua Hospital, George Mukari Hospital, Professor.
Interrupt you. Can you switch off your video?
Oh yeah, let me do that. Okay. I met Comrade Vijay, as I was saying, at the time when I was just doing my first year, having arrived in that year to do the first year at medical school. It was late in the year, around September of 1977. Himself and the now Professor Soli Rataimane came to the first year, our first year class to do some bit of campaigning. There was going to be an MSRC elections at that time. So they came to sort of, introduce themselves to us to say they will be standing for election as members of the MSRC. Indeed, I think both of them did make it through to become members of the MSRC. And subsequently, 2 years later, I also had the fortune of being elected through a by-election firstly into the MSRC 1979 in early March or April, around that time, and joining both Vijay and Soli Rataimane in the MSRC at that time, and again continue to serve through the MSRC. And as comrades might be aware, those who remember that time, that the following year in 1980, there was a major student boycott, which is one of those which took a very long time, from starting around April, starting in Cape Town, in the mostly colored schools, and then coming into Durban, very strong in the colored and Indian schools, and then slowly catching up also amongst the African high schools. The medical school took a very strong forefront together with the UDW leadership, and we were thrust into the forefront of that particular strong boycott, which went on for more than 2 months. Now, Vijay at the time was the MSRC president, with, I hope comrades can still remember, Trevor Smith, who was also, I think, a deputy to Vijay. Now, This brings a lot of memories to me because that was a very difficult student boycott, which we're mobilizing across the country as a follow-up to the 1976 uprising with VJ in the leadership. Now, the boycott just went on for too long, and the students at medical school and UDW and other campuses started to get tired of the boycott, and we kept on calling mass meetings to reinforce. We sent students home. We then had to bring them back and had mass meetings. And as students were getting tired, because we also had, as leaders, maybe we're not conscious that we can't carry on and on for more than 2 months. And VJ was chairing the meeting where we had to decide as to what do we do with this, because many students were getting agitated. Interestingly also, that VJ was doing his final year. He was in the 6th year when he was president. And we had serious problems with his classmates in the 6th year who were already looking forward to being doctors, and they were leading the counter attack in terms of stopping the student boycott. And in this particular meeting where VJ was chairing, there was a major push that we should actually stop the boycott. Now, VJ got so frustrated that he actually, from chairing the meeting, he climbed on the table and then shouted to say, "You're all sellouts." And he walked out of the meeting with disgust because he was very angry that in the middle of a very major mobilization against apartheid education, the mass meeting was now moving in the direction of stopping the boycott, which was catching up in a number of areas where by that time it had not caught out. Now, interestingly, the following day, VJ was detained by the security branch, and that helped us who remained to change the mood of the masses of the students, because once VJ was arrested, if I'm not mistaken, Trevor Smith was also temporarily also for some time taken, we were able to reconvene the mass meeting, and because of the anger now caused by the special branch for detaining VJ, we're able to, reinvigorate the boycott, and we're able to keep it going for a much longer time. So indeed, this was one of the highlights where VJ really showed his determination, showed his leadership, even as he was getting disappointed, was clear that indeed we can't stop the struggle. And we can see that beyond that, even after he had qualified, he continued working in the mass democratic movement, working with the formation of the UDF, with the underground, resulting ultimately with the arrest in December 1985. And immediately, when he came out of prison as well, continued the work for the African National Congress, ultimately on the dawn of democracy, also joining the military health services, rising to the level of a Deputy Surgeon General and also becoming Surgeon General. And we indeed appreciate his contribution when he was a Surgeon General. We all can't forget the role which he played in leading, looking after our leaders, and prominent amongst those being his former leader at Robben Island, the former leader, the president of the African National Congress, President Nelson Mandela, whom VJ looked after until the last days of his life. So we want to say to Comrade VJ's family that indeed his life was not in vain. He made a lot of difference. He made a huge contribution to the struggle for freedom. He played a major role to see us gaining our democracy in 1994. He continued to play a major role in making sure that we can make that democracy work for the benefit of the masses of our people. So we want to say on this very sad day that indeed we are going to miss him. We're saying to him, may his soul rest in eternal peace. Siyabonga.
Thank you, Comrade Joe. We will now move on to a representative from the Operational Butterfly, which is Comrade Dr. Zweli Mkhize. Dr. Zweli Mkhize, are you there? Dr. Zwelini Mkhize?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, comrades. May we acknowledge and greet the members of family, Comrade Sandy, and the children, Comrade Charlotte, the brothers, sisters, and nephews and nieces of Comrade Vijay. We also want to acknowledge the comrades who are there, ministers, comrades, classmates, and all the friends that we have been with for many years. We have also come here to pay tribute to one of our best, one of our classmates, one of our fellow combatants, a comrade who has remained consistent throughout his life in his focus on the fight for freedom, for human rights, for democracy, and that is Comrade Vijay Ramlakhan. As I start, I want to just read, excuse me, a short poem which is dedicated to a fallen soldiers, written by Walter and Saleh, and it goes this way. Fallen warriors gone too soon. The best, the brave, the bold, and bright. Like a comet thrust from the skies on a late summertime night, men who'd taken up the cause, giving no less than their all. 31 brilliant, eager minds for whom we silently pause. On behalf of the motherland, they've paid the ultimate price. We acknowledge now their families in memories of their sacrifice, and of their story, time will tell, for they shall be remembered well. I find this poem to be very appropriate just to read as a way of paying tribute to one of our fighters, one of our heroes. As my colleagues and comrades who have spoken before me, I want to first start by conveying our condolences to the members of the family, Comrade Vijay's family, his children, his wife, Sandy, to Charlotte, to the brothers, the nephews, and other members of the family. We do want to say to you, please accept that your loss is our loss, and that the pain that you're going through, we similarly feel that we are part of that pain. Because although for many years we've worked with Vijay and we've all grown apart, and we at this point do feel the sadness of his departure. He was one of our bravest warriors. He was one of the topmost of our combatants, a revolutionary and a freedom fighter, a man who loved our people to the extent that he was prepared to do everything to make sure that we achieve our freedom. He was a patriot par excellence. He was one of those who would not hesitate when it's time to move forward. Brave, so brave to a point of what I would sometimes call recklessness, because there's nothing that could stop Vijay if it was time for him to move forward. That was the nature of the men that we're paying tribute to today. So we have known Vijay as an activist throughout his life. You could never keep him down, and things would never be quiet if Vijay is around. Comrade Tutu Buthelezi was saying that was his first boss. He was the chairperson of the SRC at the time. We served with him, Comrade Joe Pasha, and a few others, Comrade Perry, Kisnasami, May Mkize Mashiko, and a number of us worked with him. He was the chairperson when Trevor was his deputy. He introduced lots of changes that was the time we were able to first understand that an SRC can actually run an office, have a secretary. He fought, went to demand it, and we got it. He got the medical school SRC to be represented at all levels, at Senate, at council, and he would fight all the way through until we were able to get a dedicated budget, more than what we'd been doing before. And he kept saying, no, whatever they do for the white SRC, they're going to do for us. That was the nature of the guy that we worked with. But all those resources, when they were available, he knew they were being used to go and fight the struggle out there. He was at the core of a number of campaigns. If Comrade PG was talking, I'm sure he would recall the work that they did on the Durban Housing Action Committee. That saw communities from the Indian communities, over 20,000 people marching down these streets of Durban, fighting for better housing. And it was one of the first few times we were able to see such high level of mobilization in the Indian community at the time. He continued this work when we were doing a campaign on what was called anti-SAIC campaign. This was now when there was the anointment of Amichan Rajpanse and others to actually create all these tricameral parliaments. And he was in the forefront as we decided that we want to fight this. As students, therefore, we went all out to mobilize against this program. But they went all out to even get more aggressive ways of confronting the participants at that level. And Comrade Vijay was amongst those. And it was very, very important for us to know that, as Comrade Joe Pasha was saying, he was, very passionate when it came to the issue of fighting on our struggle. So one of those days, we had students' meetings when he was leading, and as Joe was talking about how ultimately got himself detained. But in some of those meetings, even our so-called progressive professors like Professor Sakin, he was so upset, and one day he came to our meeting and says, listen, I'm tired of you. What is your problem? And so we told him, listen, the dean of Westville is harassing students. And then he stood up and said, I'm going to go teach him how to run a university. And he thought that we were going to recede and sit down, and we continued. Then he came back into one of our meetings, and this was a student body meeting. Says, well, I don't know what you guys want now. You must go to the bush and fight, and so on. That was the level of frustration that he had gone into. But the medical school had continued to be the nest of political activism. I think the comrades, all of us know that when we literally part of the syllabus, politics was part of the syllabus of the medical school. And those who were in the leading in the SRC had a responsibility to bring up the awareness on all the students. And that's how all of us got to grow in that level. But in the process, of course, we then all got recruited onto the underground operations. And similarly, Comrade Vijay was recruited onto the military machinery, originally led by Comrade Mtu Kuma. And then later on, this was reactivated with a number of comrades, with Comrade E.B. Ibrahim as the chairman, overall chairman over both the military and the political wing, and became the overall chairman over the KwaZulu-Natal machinery. And at that level, some of the leaders were the comrades like Tamizul, who was called TZ, and a few others, Comrade Raymond Lala, Comrade Trix, Terence Tryon, and Zakele Lloyd Ndaba, and so on, were based in Swaziland. And these comrades would then move in and out of Swaziland, of the country. Comrade Vijay working in the particular unit with Comrades Bongsene Jomo, Lulamile Klate, Tutuk Telezi, Mozari, and a whole few other comrades were part of all of that. Now, we had a number of cells that were operating in here. In this process, one of the things that we used to do, as Comrade Joe was indicating, whilst Comrade Joe was leader of Azaso, I was the leader of the SRC later. This work continued where you had programs of the students which were actually aimed at helping students to learn mathematics and science. And whereas we knew that we actually opened to go and recruit all of them into the underground activities. And so there was a huge network now of comrades who were working in Lamontville, Comrade Kondam, Comrade Tupegi Tsele, and a whole lot of other comrades who were part of this network. So Comrade O.R. Tambo had issued an instruction that because of the Nkomati Accord, we are not going to countenance a situation where our neighboring countries get bombarded each time the apartheid regime wanted to go and fight and harass people. So we must actually internalize as many of our guerrillas inside the country as possible. And in so doing, we're all assigned now to make sure that whoever comes from outside doesn't go back again. They stay in there, they train more comrades, they recruit more people inside the country, recruit more activists, and in the process, therefore, no one will be identified as having left the country. And in that process, it was going to make it difficult for the apartheid regime to be able to detect them. And this is what then happened. A whole network was then created. Comrade Vijay and Comrade Kate and Jomo were all part of that machinery, moving from Ngwavuma right towards Durban, and then of course to the other parts of Durban and so on. We were all part of this machinery, and somewhere along the line, I recall that on one occasion, we went to go and have host a meeting when Comrade Sihle was now the regional commander, who had come in together with Comrade Koboshian and a few others, and went through the whole discussions about how the whole unit had to be reorganized, and more people had to move. Some were going towards Mthatha, others were going towards Maritzburg, Newcastle, etc., etc. It actually netted a huge network of activists who were actually operating at different levels. And every now and again, some of those in the leadership, such as Comrades Ibrahim and the others, would come into the country and go out and continue to expand this. When the operation started exploding, because as you know, there were waves of operations. At some point, you had the whole group of Comrade Makubela and others, Comrade Ben Dikobe or Tom Vuyo, and so on. And each time one group is removed, they are arrested, another wave must come up. And this is what was then happening at that point. So the comrades, I recall that they left probably around June, around July or so, and August. They went to Maputo to go and report how far the progress has been and so on. They did all the reports out there, and they were happy. They came back. So when they came back around August, and we're going to now move on with the operations, something happened later on in December. That got the entire network cracked, rounded up, and comrades were arrested. The one thing which was really most distressing for comrades was when everyone was now standing on trial to discover the reports that had been left in Maputo actually resurfacing in the trial. That showed us that there was a challenge somewhere in the machinery, somewhere out there on the Swaziland or the external leadership, as it were. Unfortunately, what actually happened on this particular time, we were the units around Pietermaritzburg, which were part of now this particular day, Comrade Kevin reports, he says, look, there's a problem. We've seen certain things that actually happened. And so there was a lot of activities. As we come back, he says to me, hey, VJ's phone is tapped. I say, why? He says, each time I phone him, someone answers the phone, and it's a Boer with a very heavy Boer accent. And I phoned 4 times. Now those days there were no cell phones. It was quite later that it was sooner thereafter we realized what had happened. When we called Vijay's home, it was at the time when the police had gone in there to search that had already been cracked and been arrested. So of course the whole of the story we all know, and comrades ultimately went out Robben Island. But at this point, there was a very strong mobilization that really was aiming at the final push in the mid-80s, where a strong mass mobilization movement, which was backed by a lot of support from underground operation, military operation, and a very strong guidance from comrades who had been thoroughly trained and were part of the whole network with the ANC from outside. I'm just going through all of this because I think sometimes when we sit and look at how things happen, it's very possible for people to think that things were very simple and things were easy, especially the younger generation. But I also think it's important for us to always remind each other that this struggle has always been about our people. This struggle has also been inspired by a lot of comrades whom we lost during that period. Some of those comrades are the reasons why many of us will still continue to persevere. And that is why it's important for us as we deal with the challenges that we face today of the problems of corruption, that we must always remind everyone that this struggle, we cannot succumb, we cannot let go. We need to fight and uproot all the corruption, because we cannot allow any such misdemeanors to be the ones that will make our struggle look like it was in vain or it was cheap, as though all of us could have gone in here because we're here for self-interest. It's now fashionable in a number of instances where we get people getting appointed, and there are issues of self-interest, there are issues of people fighting, there are issues of factions. All of those issues were luxury we could never afford at that time. And Comrade Vijay has remained true and consistent to those kinds of principles over the years. And therefore, it's important for us to say, when we think of him today, we must remember the good values that he lived, the good values of always putting our people first, of always, putting our freedom struggle first, of always knowing we must do everything, and not for your own interest, but for the sake of our freedom and our struggle. He came back later from Robben Island, as I think we've all heard, and we've worked very well when he was on the military health services, and he was focusing on quite a lot of issues, in particular, how to bring up younger cadres up, and also even some of those who are low-ranking orderlies, to train them on health as health orderlies. He was running a very interesting program at that point, which is really almost aligned to what we're doing with community health workers. All of this about how do we maximize our ability to reach out to all our people at the local level. Comrade Joe has spoken about how he took pride, the responsibility assigned to look after President Mandela, with a team of 22 other specialists and doctors who worked with him, Umpo Komati and a whole lot of other comrades that he worked with. All of these, these are duties that he executed with distinction, with dedication, with commitment, with the extent to which he was dedicated to this. We all knew that President Madiba, for his age, it was mostly because of the whole environment around him that had actually created even the extra numbers of days that we enjoyed of his life. And Comrade Vijay used to be very proud about that. We want to say today, Comrade Vijay, although we know he had some challenges that he had to deal with, particularly at the time he was retiring from the army, but nevertheless, he has led a good fight. He has run a good race. And we want to say today, we must dedicate his memories to the kind of exemplary leadership that we want to see being reenacted amongst all of us. And we must therefore say to Comrade Vijay, you have worked well, we've done well, you have run a good race, and for us, we are very proud of all that we've achieved. And therefore, at this point, we want to say, fare you well, comrades. And to the members of the family, we want to express our deepest condolences. And to all the comrades and the colleagues, let's never forget each other. We must always remember that we are part of a generation that was special. We've got a history to leave behind. We've got messages, we've got stories to tell. Let's tell those stories. Then on his sad departure, we do really want to say we were all shocked and saddened about it. We didn't expect. Actually, although Vijay used to be a president ahead of us, he's actually younger than us. He's a very, very young fellow. We didn't really think this was the time to lose him and say farewell to him. But there lies the secrets of life. You will say farewell to those that you never expected will depart before you. And in this case, I want to say to all of you, as comrades, condolences to all of you. And let's therefore salute one of our bravest, one of our best fighters. And Sithi hamba kahle Mkhondo wesizwe. Thank you very much. Amandla. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade Zweli. Comrade Joe, Comrade Zweli, Comrade Sibongiseni, if my boss would have it his way, you would not even attend lectures, go for what rounds or for tats. You would be struggling all the way. But then again, he understood that we needed doctors of your caliber. Thank you so much. We shall now have a tribute from Comrade Praveen Godan. I hope he's back here at the meeting.
I'm back, Chair. Greetings to you, Comrade Dudu, and thank you very much for the privilege of saying a few words on this very sad but very important occasion in our history. Firstly, my condolences to Comrade Sandy, Charlotte, and the children, and the broader family of Vijay Ramlakhan. When I think about the many decades I've known him, the following words come to my mind: a humanitarian, an activist, a doctor, a public servant, a leader, as many people have pointed out, a freedom fighter, and a pioneer in creating democratic institutions in the post-1994 South Africa. It's with great sadness that I say farewell to a comrade and a friend that I've known for many years in the different roles that he has played over many decades. Vijay has always been a brave and forthright activist. No challenge, whether in the apartheid era or in a hard-won democracy, was insurmountable for him. It's interesting that this generation of doctors that we have on the program today were studying at medical school while I was a pharmacist at King Edward Hospital. So our paths crossed quite frequently at the time. Vijay was always willing to make the necessary sacrifices and the ultimate sacrifice, if need be, in his role in MK and in the ANC underground. His leadership qualities enabled him to mobilize young activists, as many of the comrades have pointed out, into the underground structures of the ANC and MK. He inspired bravery, inspired innovation, and sacrifice with those people that he worked. It's fascinating that the decades of the 1970s and 1980s that Comrade Joe and Comrade Zweli and others have been talking about is a period during which, post the Rivonia trials and the repression that took place then, gave rise to a new wave of political consciousness and the development of many thousands of cadres within the country, and Vijay was one of them. It was a period of political awakening and political movement towards the Freedom Charter and the Congress movement more generally. It was a period during which, from groups of activists, we translated the energy of people like Vijay and others into a huge movement that found its base amongst mass struggles and mass issues and massive mobilization that took place, particularly from 1980 and 79 and 80 onwards, when many of you will remember the Wilson Roundtree strike, the Fatties and Moni strike, the role that trade unions played, and later community-based organizations and others as well. This was also a period during which, through those sorts of active student and community and other struggles, that a revolutionary consciousness developed, a consciousness that led people like Vijay and others to begin to ask themselves, are we willing to sacrifice our lives for the democratic future that we and our people should actually have in this country? And the answer, quite simply, was yes. This was a period in which this mobilization led to concrete organizations being created, SRCs, ZASO, the civics, the Release Mandela campaign in the early 1980s, the emergence of COSATU by 1985, the mobilization amongst women and youth, all of which took place both in the KZN area as we know it today, but importantly throughout the country as well. The key thing that happened in that time, comrades, that doesn't happen often enough now, is the kind of campaigns that were used to mobilize people and in particular inspire the revolutionary consciousness amongst young activists at the time, in which campaigns Vijay played a crucial role, whether it was against the dummy structures like the South African Indian Council in the 1981 campaign, the 1983 campaigns where we created a non-racial front, both against the tricameral parliament and the Koronov bills, and the emergence of boycott movements from the late 70s onwards in the Eastern Cape and many other parts of the world, and later what became known as the mass democratic movement. But it's the UDF that actually gave us the umbrella within which we could create non-racialism and give opportunities to women leaders and youth and other sections of our society. That mass mobilization is actually what created the climate and the occasion when people like Vijay then began to recruit activists into the structures of the ANC and MK in particular. It is this political climate and the climate of mass mobilization that gave rise to the large numbers of activists, as has been described, joining the ANC underground, the MK underground, the Communist Party underground, and this intensified, as Comrade Zweli said, the mass struggles that took place and combined those mass struggles with the political arm and the military arm of the African National Congress. Vijay has always been a strong character, and from his life, which ended too soon as far as I'm concerned, there are many lessons to be drawn and lessons which are very relevant to our own situation in South Africa today. I'm sure that one of the key elements that he would like all of us to inherit is a passion for social justice, a passion for having no poverty in South Africa, reducing inequality, and where the elite of our society remember that they owe an obligation to the masses of poor people that we still have in this country. He would, as other speakers have said, have a very dim view of corruption. And we hope that, that campaigns to fight corruption, led by the president of the country and the ANC, are campaigns that will eliminate this scourge amongst our people, both in the state and in society and in business, in a way in which it will never return to our country. The manner in which Vijay grew up as an activist and practiced as an activist also demonstrated his deep passion for non-racialism. And in those days of the 1970s and 1980s, it wasn't easy for communities and activists from across the different divides in our society, Chatsworth, Lamontville, Wentworth, Merebank, and elsewhere, to actually reach out to each other because they would be crushed by the security police. And yet, you can see from the comrades that formed the Butterfly unit and other units in the greater Durban area, that non-racialism was a key part of their campaigning and the kind of recruitment that actually took place. Service and sacrifice in the interests of the broader population is another hallmark of Vijay right to the end of his life. And it's a lesson that younger activists that should learn today, that we should not only think about ourselves and have self-interest in mind, but also understand that we need to produce new Vijays for the 21st century that will carry forward the democratic values for which he fought and which he lived as well. And in many ways, Vijay was an organic intellectual. He did things, he learned his trade as a doctor, but he also learned the revolutionary lessons that the movement taught him and he taught others as well. And it is this a kind of tribute that I think that we can pay to him and his life, where those lessons are embedded in the hearts and minds of activists of the future, and the way in which we practice politics today, whether inside the ANC or anywhere else. And finally, Comrade Chair, Vijay demonstrated to us that we are mere servants. Those of us that belong to the movement of our people, we are not the masters of our people. And that is a culture that needs to be reintroduced into our movement so that we start reproducing the Vijays of the world and extend the kind of influence, the kind of ideology, and the kind of way in which he led his life for many, many decades to come. Hambagashle Vijay, and we wish the family everything of the best at this very difficult time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Comrade Pravin. Before I call on Comrade Sibongiseni to represent Izboshwa, there's a slight change on the program for those who have a program in front of you. Instead of a eulogy from Metandi Mudise, we're going to have a eulogy from Comrade Ibi Ibrahim, who will be representing Metandi and also speaking on his own behalf. Sibongiseni, you are next. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Comrade Dudu, my co-program director, and Comrade Barry. When Comrade Zweli has spoken, he has actually done well as my leader also in the MK in Butterfly. The only part I'm going to flag are those parts that Comrade Zweli may not be aware of, because we chose a route to go to Robben Island. He chose a route to go to exile. We were all running, and depending which one was the nearer route. For him, was in Pumalanga, so he thought it was nearer to go to exile than to go to Robben Island. So that's where I would then cover what Comrade Zweli, as my leader in the Butterfly, would not have covered. It's very striking that Comrade Vijay was such a humble person. His humility, I'm going to just use examples. Point one, Comrade Vijay he allowed himself to be led by some of the MK leaders who were younger than him by age in the Natal Command, and he did not see any offense in that, and that was very humbling. The bravery of Comrade Vijay during our work was demonstrated when we would be in midnight in the deep rural part of KwaZulu-Natal in Ngwavuma, waiting for some of our MK operatives to come into the country. For me as a Zulu boy in that area, anybody would have actually asked me, who am I and all that, I would be able to reply in Zulu. But Comrade Vijay would brave that and still be in the midnight in the deep part of the country where he would not be able to communicate in that language. And that, to me, was actually very much of importance to say this is a comrade who was allowing himself to take instructions from the ANC, from the MK, and do some of the things that some of us would have frowned upon to do. Well, Comrade Vijay we were medical students at the time we were working, and he was already a doctor in training. And Comrade Junabai, you did not teach us how to treat malaria properly, as you probably did not have as much in Durban. Comrade Vijay would not forget to say, when we were going to Swaziland, we need to get some crash courses of treating malaria, because we received comrades in the country who would actually be tired, headaches, fever, and we did not know what to do with them until we were taught that any of such comrades coming into the country, we must treat that as malaria until proven otherwise. Now, we did not know how to treat malaria. Thanks to Comrade Vijay and his foresight, that there is a hospital in Mlazi, it's now no more, called Emalandeni. That hospital we had a superintendent of the hospital called Comrade Ray Bele. Comrade Vijay and Comrade Ray Bele admitted and treated our comrades in that hospital. And all we did, some of us who were just learning as students, was to be curious and bring those comrades into that bed. And that was something extremely important to us. We could not admit those comrades with malaria at King Edward or any of the government hospitals, including private hospitals, was we were to explain where are these people coming from, where do they contract malaria? And that was an extreme bravery by Comrade Vijay and the leadership of Comrade Ray Bell. Comrade Vijay used during our detention as political detainees, he would come to be seen and be treated by Comrade Dr. Segi Naidu, who was a district surgeon there. And Comrade Vijay would leave messages for us in the consultation room to say, Comrade Singh, well, no problems. Comrade Onda is not well, and this and that. So we use those consultation rooms as a place to meet. We did not meet physically, but Comrade Vijay will leave behind messages. And thanks to those doctors who looked after us during the time we were political detainees, our comrades, fellow students were then. This might just add a bit of a light moment to the members of the family that Comrade Vijay would say during the trial, hey, Comrade Spongsen, this is the first time I am eating a boiled chicken. You know, in Chatsworth, we cook chicken into curry or we roast it. But here you are asking me to eat a boiled chicken. Why we were eating a boiled chicken that was brought by Dudu was because maybe there's been an information that if we eat this chicken, something is going to happen to the judge. The judge is going to be drowsy. The judge is not going to be able to follow the proceedings and follow the witness very well, and therefore we get a lighter sentence. Little did we know, and our relatives know, that there will be recordings in court, and therefore whether the judge is asleep or not at that moment, the judge will wake up and just read the records. But indeed, we did get lighter sentences. Lighter sentences thanks to Comrade Andrew Zondo and Comrade Lulamile Tlate. Those two, when Comrade Lulamile Tlate was to be called into the witness box, we were told that this witness that is about to come in would talk about all the 12 accused in that who are there due to being accused number one, and he's going to talk about all the 45 bomb blasts that have taken place in and around Durban. Comrade Dudu was seated next to me here to lift her baby at that time, Konto, and Comrade Vijay seated next to me as accused number 3. We were all stunned, but thanks to Comrade Lulamile, who came in and said, these are my comrades. Comrades do not betray other comrades, and they refused to give evidence. That is why we then are still where we are, and we got what we think were lighter sentences. We went to prison marching and dancing because if Comrade Lulamile had spoken in that trial, there would have been 5 death sentences. The first one would have been our commander, Sihem Bongwa. Number 2 will be Comrade Vijay Ramlakan. Number 3 would have been Comrade Pumezo Nweni. Number 4 would have been Comrade Kondam Somi. And number 5 would have been myself. So Comrades Lulamile and Andrew Zondo saved 5 death sentences, notwithstanding that Comrade Andrew Zondo went into the gallows saying, I have already been found guilty. I hope that if I don't give evidence against you, you will remain behind and be truthful to the African National Congress and to the plight of the country of our people. Comrade Vijay landed on Robben Island like all of us, and there are very few comrades, they will agree with me that we went in there after our trial and we were stroke 87. So my prison number was 25 stroke 87. And only myself and Comrade Vijay, we were released on 1988. Little did we know that we were not being released, but the security force was waiting for us at Victor Verster, pleading with us to give evidence once more, now against Lulamile Tlate. Well, we both refused, and Comrade Vijay led that to say we cannot give evidence against somebody who refused to give evidence against us. We cannot accept that liberty. We cannot accept to be free when the person who actually made us to get lighter sentences is going to be staying in prison. And that was extreme bravery on the side of Comrade Vijay. Comrade Vijay led us and led me in supporting our fellow prisoners in Robben Island in improving their quality of life, something that probably would have to write a book about that, because there were certain ethical issues, there were certain confidential issues that should have been done differently to our comrades, but some of them, they are still alive and well today because Comrade Vijay changed the management of some of those comrades who were in Robben Island. Comrade Vijay led us in 1990 in prison on what we had as a hunger strike. And he actually was well respected by our leaders when he actually produced what we call the protocol of who was to be in the hunger strike. And if I could remember, they were saying all those comrades who are 60 years and above who will not participate in the hunger strike. All those comrades who have comorbidities, hypertension, diabetes, epilepsy, chronic lung disease will not participate in the hunger strike. And across all sections, comrades respected the protocol that Comrade Vijay coined, and of course, all of us who were there supported him. We were actually led by Comrade Vijay in doing what we call ward rounds, because a bit of this, comrades would actually get an advice from Comrade Vijay, and they will come and ask me for the same advice. And therefore we said, Comrade Vijay, let us divide the prison into two. You do the other part, I do the other. So that when comrades come to us, we'll ask them from which section you come from, then they will indicate them, say, go to Comrade Vijay, he's the one who's going to advise you. So that we can actually not get comrades getting a second opinion on us, and therefore having no time to be left for other issues. I want to end with this very important part. As the butterfly unit, Comrade Zweli, we have what we will call our Lily's Leaf. We do have our headquarters as a butterfly unit. It's just that we have not formalized that. Comrade Sandy in 2 Nabada Road, Comrade Sandy and Comrade Vijay mentored and groomed Comrade Pila Ndwandwe. It was in this house at 2 Nabada Road, Merebank, where we met to plan our MK programs, where we met to actually get instructions from our leaders in the MK, what next to do, where we met to report what we had done in Swaziland, in Mozambique, to our leaders. Of course, we did all that so easily and nicely after a well-prepared lunch by Comrade Sandy. And we missed those luncheons, Comrade Sandy. Maybe you must come back to Durban and still continue with that now and help us. Now, I'm mentioning this because the last Comrade Pravin has talked about the phones being bugged. It was in this house that we received one of the comrades from exile, and they started sending phones of the houses, including this one of 2 Nabada Road, which was our headquarters. This is the house where Comrade Sandy and Comrade Vijay were arrested from, at 2 Nabada Road, Merebank. We would wish, as Comrade Derek has indicated, there were certain tasks that Comrade Vijay left with us. In November 2019, he called a meeting where all our relatives, wives, sisters, and brothers said, can they be able to write about what did the arrest and sending us to prison meant to them? What did it do to them? And we are putting together that, and it's a pity that as we put this together, Comrade Vijay will no more be with us, but we will follow his instructions, because there's quite a lot that could be written by people like Comrade Sandy, Comrade Charlotte, and all our family members who actually were supporting us in this process going forward. It's our desire, Comrade Sihle, that we get that house, we buy that house of 2 Nabada Road, Merebank, and rename that house V.J. Ramlakhan and Sandy Africa Museum. And all the artifacts of the butterfly and memories of Pila Ndwandwe, of Phumezo Nciweni, memories of Comrade Koboshiane, memories of all those who have moved on, Abo Comrade Leni Naidu, all that family of butterfly could actually have the artifacts in that house. And it shall happen because Comrade Vijay already supported this view. Comrade Vijay joins 4 others of the Durban 12 that have since departed. He actually joins Comrade Sihle Mbongo, our commander. He's joining Comrade Phumezo Nciweni, who is laid to rest in Icala in the Eastern Cape. He's joining Aaron Dlomo, who's laid to rest in Bizana, and Comrade Stanley Bila, whose remains we have still not found. He leaves us Comrade Dudu, our accused number 1, and myself, I was accused number 2, Jude Francis, accused number 5, Ondam Somi was accused number 6, Bafong Nguku was accused number 10, Malusi Majola was accused number 11, and Vus Mashobo was accused number 12. There's many others who actually did not go through this trial, but were part of the butterfly, Zinto Cele. And the one thing that is also very important and remarkable about 2 Nabada Road in Meerbank, on the 24th of October, 1985, when there had been a bomb blast in Bluff, one of the remaining comrades who was injured there, Comrade Sbu Mazibuko, ran all the way from Bluff until Allen Taylor residence. When he arrived in Allen Taylor residence, one of my leaders took him to 2 Nabada Road, Meerbank. 2 Nabada Road, Meerbank became a casualty. Comrade VJ took over and treated and actually got the comrade who had been blown by a 6-kilogram limpet mine and survived, and 2 others died. And when police were looking for this surviving terrorist, 2 Nabada Road, Meerbank was a safe house. He stayed, treated, looked after by Comrade VJ and Sandy in that house until Comrade Sbu Mazibuko got better and was transported out of the country by the very same Comrade VJ, assisted by Comrade Ricky Naidu. This is how we feel so strongly about a lot of work done by Butterfly, but also why I would wish that part of our history, part of Comrade VJ's history, which was at 2 Nabada Road, should not be forgotten. I still wish that we will be able to get that sorted out, that the house at 2 Nabada Road, Meerbank, will be bought by Butterfly with any assistance we get, and it shall be named Comrade VJ Ramlakan and Comrade Sandy Africa Museum. I'm able to say these things now because there's Comrade VJ, Comrade Sihle leave. I'm getting much more being thought of as one of the senior MK Butterfly members. And therefore, when I make some of these pronouncements about Comrade Onda, Comrade Vus Mashobo, they will actually follow these as instructions. Of course, we still have to check this with about Comrade Uzweli and other leaders. Thank you very much for listening to me. Amandla.
Thank you, Comrade Sibongiseni. Just a little correction. I was not responsible for trying to bewitch the judge, Comrade Sibongiseni. It came from the community members who did not want to see you go to prison. We will now have that revolutionary song before we ask Comrade Ibi Ibrahim, who was Vijay's mentor, to give us a tribute plus a eulogy. Thank you.
Oliver,
Sorry to interrupt. Can we cut the song short? We're running short of time. We'll now have Comrade Ibi Ibrahim, who was Vijay's mentor, political mentor, as well as a commander, and he will also do a eulogy on behalf of Meta and Mudisa. Thank you. Over to you, Comrade Ibi.
Thank you very much. I was just informed not a little while ago that Thandi Modisa couldn't be here because they're having load shedding problem in Cape Town and she couldn't make it, and I should replace her. I wish on behalf of the African National Congress to convey our condolences to the Ramlakan family and friends, and especially to Ramlakan children. The African National Congress was saddened by the news that Ramlakan had passed away. And he was, of course, an important cadre of this organization and a very important freedom fighter. He was there when the UDF was formed. He was also a member of Condolences, and also, as Praveen did say, that he was in the ANC underground. Of course, Ramlakan was a member of Condolences, as a member of Condolences, where he was a people's soldier because he was part of what was called the People's Army. He qualified as a medical doctor, motivated by the desire to serve the people in the health section. But as many other doctors, he did realize and keenly aware that health and freedom were inseparable. And therefore, many of them joined the liberation movement and became active participants in the struggle. We said the people's movement, Condolences was a real people's army. At the very beginning, when it was formed, we recruited peasants and workers, activists of the movement. And then, of course, the students joined Condolences, particularly after the Soweto uprising. But we also attracted professionals, attracted doctors and lawyers who became very active members of Condolences. And of course, it also attracted foreign revolutionaries who then also participated in the armed struggle of the people. Now, Vijay, of course, like Dr. Zlomo, Dr. Mkhize, could have had a comfortable life and practicing the medicine, but rather they chose a different path, a path of struggle and a path of sacrifice. It was a great privilege for me to meet Dr. Ramlakan, and we were in Robben Island together, as Dr. Zlomo has said. We spent many hours talking about the struggle in South Africa, analyzing the struggle in the country and internationally. He was somehow an internationalist. He told me that he named his daughter Rosa after Rosa Luxemburg, who was a Marxist-Leninist. I think she was a German at that time. And he was very much an internationalist and very keen in international politics. We had a lot of political discussion about the future of our revolutionary struggle in the country and the international balance of forces. And of course, just a few anecdotes he introduced to us. He said, you know, there is a fruit called kiwi, Now, we didn't know what was kui. See? He says, no, it's a very good, very healthy fruit. And he ordered a lot of kui. And he wanted to give us this kui to taste, and we tasted it, and it didn't look very good. It didn't sound, it didn't taste very good. But he was a person that was very caring, and we got along very well. He got along very well with comrades. He also told me, you know what, you have a youthful face, but your hair must be dyed. And I said to him, no, you see, I can't dye my hair. But he somehow conspired with Sandy. And the next visit, Sandy brought a dye, a hair dye, which I use, and I regretted it since then, you see, of using this hair dye. Now, in the 80s, because there was the tricameral parliament and the opposition to tricameral parliament and the increased opposition to the Bantustan, the apartheid system became very vicious. They started attacking and killing our people in the frontline area. We also felt that we should increase armed activities in the country to meet the challenges of what the apartheid regime was doing. And Butterfly Unit and other units played a very important role to increase the pressure in the country, increase the armed activities. Of course, Vijay always knew that armed activities must not be separated from the political activities that was going on. That is why he was able to combine his armed activities with his UDF activity and the African National Congress underground. You know, he was never despondent. And he always said, you know, we have to pick up the spear. Pick up the spear and continue the struggle. Pick up the spear and take the struggle further. Take the struggle onwards. Of course, the important point he made the last time when I saw him, that our struggle was a struggle of the masses. It was a mass struggle. And it is becoming increasingly a struggle for, it was not a struggle for political leadership contestation. He was saying that our struggle was moving from a mass struggle to a struggle for leadership contestation. And that he felt was not correct, and it was harming, it was scarring the organization. And he felt that we must take on the spear once again, and we need to march forward. Ramlakan, of course, was a very dedicated comrade. He was very humble and always wanted to serve the people rather than looking for fame or wealth accumulation. He was a cadre that was befitting to the values of our movement. And the message, of course, he gives, and the message that we all must take from him, that we need to take on the spear politically, fight the new enemies that are emerging in our country. The enemy of greed, of factionalism, of corruption. And the homage we could pay to Ramlakan is, as he said, we must pick up the spear and continue to fight and not be despondent. I think he had a lot of optimism that in the end we are going to win, and the African National Congress and the Liberation Movement will emerge victorious and become what the African National Congress was before. And the values of the African National Congress must be reinstated. So as the African National Congress will miss Vijay Ramlakan. We say you were a comrade, you fought a good fight, and we will always remember you for your contribution to the struggle, the sacrifices that you made. And we wish we wish the family and condolences. And also we say to Vijay Ramlakan, may your soul rest in peace. And Hamba Gachle, comrade Vijay Ramlakan, we in the African National Congress and in the liberation movement generally, we wish to pay tribute to the fight that you have fought and the sacrifice you have made to create a new non-racial democratic South Africa. We remember that as Umkhonto we Sizwe, we were a non-racial organization. We had in Umkhonto we Sizwe people of all classes, all racial groups. Africans, Indians, coloreds, and progressive white stood shoulder to shoulder to face the brutality of apartheid. And that is how we created this non-racial democratic South Africa. But we must see that this non-racial South Africa is not destroyed by forces that are bent to destroying us. Go Hamba Gachle, Ramlakan, and we wish you farewell. Thank you, Comrade Chair.
Thank you, Comrade Ibi. My apologies to the organizers. I was supposed to give each speaker 3 minutes, but even for my boss, it would have been career limiting to stop all the above speakers. We will now have our daughter, Rosa Pausa, as we called her in the Devon 12, to give us an obituary. Thank you. Over to you, Rosa.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Former Surgeon General, Lieutenant General Dr. Vijayanand Indrajit Ramlakan, DMG, MMS, MMB, Order of the Knights of St. John, passed away on the 27th of August, 2020 from a suspected heart attack. He was 62 years old. General Vijay Ramlakan, a consummate soldier and freedom fighter, headed the South African Military Health Service from 2005 to 2013, and was later appointed as the Chief of Corporate Services prior to his retirement in 2015. Dr. Ramlakan served the dual professions he had chosen with absolute dedication, that of a military commander and strategist, as well as that of a medical doctor. Born on the 28th of September, 1957, Vijay Ramlakan came from a family of 8 children. They had shared a loving home with their parents in Cato Manor, Durban. When the area was declared white by the family and the family was forcibly moved to the then newly built apartheid township of Chatsworth, Durban. Noting such pervasive injustices from early childhood and into his medical career, that while Black public hospitals were overflowing, white designated hospitals stood virtually empty, only served to intensify his struggle for a just and equitable South Africa. At university, initially the University of Durban-Westville and later the University of Natal Medical School, Vijay Ramlakan immersed himself in the struggle for freedom, serving on the Medical Students Representative Council from 1979 to 1980. Whilst he was still a junior medical student, he joined Umkhonto we Sizwe as an underground operative in 1977, receiving military training in South Africa and neighboring Swaziland. Qualifying as a medical doctor in 1980, he initially worked in the casualty department at King Edward VIII Hospital. During this period, he also served as Vice President and General Secretary of the Natal Health Workers Association from 1981 to 1983. He was also involved in the founding of the UDF in 1983 and was a member of the Area Political Military Committee. He always recognized that for the struggle to be won, the involvement of communities was critical to this objective. In 1985, he was part of Operation Butterfly, a joint internal and external political military structure to coordinate the underground African National Congress. It targeted identified persons, businesses, and institutions that were deemed collaborators of supporters of the apartheid government. At his trial in 1986, Ramlakan said that as a doctor, his first consideration and duty was to his patients. He would not permit considerations of religion, race, politics, or social standing to interfere with this mission. He declared, "I am no starstruck idealist, pipe dreamer, or angry young man. My motivations have been based on the scientific study of our society. No sentence is going to reform or rehabilitate me. No further repression is going to reform or rehabilitate our oppressed community. No sentence, however severe, is going to serve as a deterrent to any of us. Whatever form the sentence takes, there will always be more fighters to sentence until we achieve our final victory, until the people do govern." He took this fearless attitude, unyielding pursuit of excellence, and unwavering ambition into all the roles entrusted to him in the democratic South Africa. He had a remarkable insight into identifying potential among young leaders and then inspiring the best out of them. In sentencing the freedom fighters at his trial, Judge Tyrion said he took into consideration that Ramlakan had warned his trainees to be careful not to injure anyone. For his actions, Ramlakan and 8 other members of Operation Butterfly were sentenced to periods of up to 12 years on Robben Island. Upon their early release in 1991, Comrade Chris Hani himself was there to welcome them. At the Truth and Reconciliation Commission in 2000, Commander Ramlakan took responsibility for actions that could have resulted in damages to properties or injuries to persons that could have been involved in such guerrilla attacks. Ramlakan's defense is captured in the following extracts from his statements. "I decided to involve myself in the struggle against apartheid and to do all that was within my power to overthrow the apartheid regime in 1976. I decided to take up arms and join Mkhonto we Sizwe as the armed wing of the African National Congress in the furtherance of that aim." In 2011, Ramlakan presented this conundrum of 2 apparent conflicting professions, that of a soldier, which can involve the taking of life, and that of being a medical doctor, which is to serve and heal, to the newly graduated medical specialists at the College of Medicine. The highlight of his distinguished career in the military was to serve as Surgeon General. His mission in this position was to provide world-class clinical care. Recognizing that health was dependent on many social and other drivers of health, General Ramlakan introduced policies aimed at improving physical health and strengthening educational programs internally as well as with the institutes of higher learning, promoting and encouraging military health research. In the growing boom of the HIV and AIDS pandemic in the mid-2000s, he brought together world experts, including South Africa's best, at the first Military Health HIV conference, charting a way forward for specialized care for military members affected by HIV. When national strikes affected health delivery at public hospitals in 2007 and 2009, Ramlakan deployed his military doctors to staff the public facilities. These efforts received great acclaim at the time. For the 2010 FIFA World Cup, Ramlakan was a critical member of the National Joint Operations Center in terms of medical operations during the event. General Ramlakan did not tolerate fools lightly. He read widely on many subjects and never attended any formal meeting without prior research and preparation. In order to ensure that history was not a single narrative of the former apartheid government, Ramlakan led a team to document this history of military health that included the contributions of liberation movements. This culminated in a lengthy book, The Fourth Dimension, The History of Military Health in South Africa. His personal written reflections on the father of the nation, Nelson Mandela, Mandela's last years, later voluntarily withdrawn, had a mixed reception. And at the time of his death, Ramlakan was robustly defending the publication of the book at the Health Professions Council of South Africa. One of his recent personal projects was to document the biographical narrative detailing the history of each of the 3,000 ex-political prisoners who were on Robben Island. While he worked hard in recent years to consolidate the database, the project remains one of his many unrealized ambitions. For his unfailing contribution to the health and welfare of our country and the freedom of our people, we salute and honor the memory of Lieutenant General Vijay Ramlakan, a father, a brother, a son of the soil, a comrade, a friend, and a true patriot. Hambagatle Nkoto.
Thank you, Rosa. Comrade Smokseni will give a vote of thanks.
Comrade Dudu, Comrade Simongseni has had a power failure, so I'm going to conclude, and firstly just to thank all the comrades who participated tonight in terms of the tributes from the professional side, his personal life, his political life, and most of all, his military and prison life. So we really appreciate the comrades who took time out. But let me just acknowledge very quickly the leadership of Minister Zweli Mkhize and Comrade Jesse Duarte, who led and with Comrade Phoebe Potgieter, who led the team from Luthuli House to set up this operational program tonight and help us with the support. And then to my fellow program directors, Comrade Dudu, we were first part of the grouping that recruited Dudu, and what a great marshalling of the forces, ultimately becoming accused number one. So in terms of Dudu, Sibongiseni, and myself, we really extend our heartfelt condolences to the families, Sandy and family and Charlotte and family, and really to the extended family of Vijay Ramlakan from Chatsworth, and then all comrades, friends, well-wishers. And really, it's a tragic loss, a great loss for our society and a great loss for the country and for the continent. Truly, Vijay was an internationalist. And as you've seen from the comrades from Cuba, they really reminisce about the times that he spent with them. In closing, the funeral ceremony will be in Durban. It's a military ceremony at midday in Durban. Of course, with COVID-19 restrictions, it's a restricted funeral. And there'll be a private cremation thereafter at the crematorium in Umgeni. The recording of this entire memorial service has been recorded, and we will await further instructions from the team at Luthuli House in terms of dissemination of the recording. And with that, comrades, we dip our banners for a true patriot. God bless and rest in peace, Vijay Ramlakan, till we meet. I'll hand back to the organizing committee, but I think that concludes it, and we'll now begin the closing of the video process. Thanks, Shanaz. Good night, and thanks for waiting.
Hamba Tina baba mkondo sinisele ukuwabulala wona amabhulu. Tina baba mkondo sinisele ukuwabulala wona amabhulu. Hamba kahle mkondo, we mkondo, we Israel.